is a Weather Tracker TV breaking weather alert.
All right, folks, I want to jump on here live with you right now, right around 5:15. William Cole here in the Storm Studio, and we are tracking a supercell now moving into Denton County. And we knew we had the opportunity of active weather heading into the evening. We've been really talking about this activity that's kind of been skirting up along the Red River Valley, that we could have maybe a severe storm or two up there with that. But again, we're still monitoring well back off to the northwest additional storms that are going to be forming up along the dry line. And again, those storms, as we go through the evening, will also be moving into our northwestern counties. And again, potentially, the deeper we get into the evening, after 10 p.m., even into the Metroplex as well. So a very active evening on tap, but we do want to talk about what's developing right now and really moving into Denton County. This storm is kind of by itself. A lot of the other showery activity is now beginning to kind of wane and go away as anticipated. So let me go and zoom in. And we'll take a look at this here. Like I mentioned, this is a new severe thunderstorm warning. Technically, there's two warnings around this cell. The newest warning goes until 6 p.m. There's an opportunity of $half size hail, winds up to 60 miles per hour. And again, I'm just looking for anything new coming in here from the Weather Service, just off the wire. They're putting a few new pieces of information on there. It's got a pretty decent hail core. This is going to be moving into Denton County, but the way it looks right now, it's mainly going to be staying north of Denton proper. In fact, let me go and lapse this. There is some very weak rotation now developing on the backside as well. The overall tornado probabilities today are low. The atmospheric conditions are not favorable for tornadoes. Anytime you have a supercell shape, what do? You do your due diligence. Supercells by nature, they do rotate and they can develop, again, even larger hail. But there's the motion. Let me go and take a look at this here. And again, you can't see the motion easterly, but a bit of a southeasterly push, right? So, locations like Crum, even potentially as far south as Denton, it's not impossible this activity does make it that far to the south. Crossing 35 for sure north of Denton and then moving over towards Lake Ray Roberts, the Aubrey area, locations like that for sure. But there's a bit of a southerly wobble here, and I don't think it's impossible. This maybe wobbles even as far south as the Denton area. The Weather Service right now putting that hail core at about $half size hail. We're getting indications here on radar, could be jumping up larger than that, and that will be one of the concerns. Even with the activity coming in from the west as we go through the evening, large hail will be a concern as we go through the evening, right? We haven't talked about any of this through the hot, dry summer months, but we really got to check back in now to North Texas severe weather, because that's truly what's on tap as we go through this evening. I want to go and take a look at, let's go look at the hail core tracker. And again, bear with me, I've just got this in manual mode. We're just going to click through this here. And we'll go ahead and zoom in. And we'll go and take a look at the, as I mentioned, the hail core tracker. Give us just 1 second. We'll try that one more time. And if not, we may need to come back to that if needed. We'll see if the computer just pops it up. And like I mentioned, if not, we'll just simply have to come back to it. But let me go and zoom this out, and we will look at that hail core tracker coming up momentarily. The one other thing I do want to mention is the fact that we do have a severe thunderstorm watch in effect. And again, this is for our far western counties. And again, this watch is in effect until 11 p.m. So again, we're talking about Montague, we're talking about Jack County, Young County, and even out through Stevens County there in the blue. And again, I just want to preface this one more time. And in fact, you see that, let's go and take this full, and in fact we'll even take the weather wall here, but you can see coming out again out by Childress, right? This is truly what we were kind of going to be watching, what you see developing out around Childress. Those are also supercells as well. That's going to turn into a broken line of supercells, eventually a complex moving into our northwestern counties, and then potentially even to the Metroplex by 10 p.m., right? So we're really watching that out there. That's what's had our attention throughout the day. We knew we would have this. We weren't overly concerned about this. But now kind of in between all of that, we've got another supercell that developed, right? And so that could be a bit concerning. Sometimes when you're in between waves, this is a weak wave. That's more of a stronger short wave coming out. You get something in between it. And again, sometimes it can become quite severe. We have a lot of jet stream energy today. The jet stream is moving up top, and it's moving at a really good clip. So we're not lacking jet stream energy by any stretch of the imagination. And so that's why even this here, it should be able to sustain itself, right? If this gets going, there's no reason to think it's going to weaken before it continues tracking off to the east. The jet stream should be able to sustain even that as we go through the early evening. And then again, like I mentioned, we're truly watching even what's coming in from the northwest. So this is really kind of unfolding now into more of a real deal North Texas severe weather day. But okay, let's go and zoom back in. And again, we want to talk about the Metroplex first of all, right? The Metroplex evening commute, everyone is wondering what's going on. Typically, the more active areas for the evening commute, right? It's kind of south of 380. We're talking about Denton over to McKinney and south. Again, we don't want to forget kind of about Ann and Melissa, up 75, right? But generally speaking, most of the higher volume of traffic is south of 380. We're watching this cell. Again, obviously, we'll see how far, to the south it drifts. Right now, it's moving kind of east, but a bit of a southeasterly component to it. And again, like I mentioned, it's not impossible, especially with that hell core on the backside, that again, it does potentially try and even move down towards the Denton area. I want to just take a look at this here, because we are getting some new information coming in here on the weather wire as well. And that's just something from the Storm Prediction Center talking about their watch that they just issued. So we'll take another look at that coming up. But I want to zoom back in then specifically for Denton County. And again, what we'll do, we'll come back over to the Hell Core tracker. And like I said, we may need to actually here momentarily queue some of this stuff up. I've just got this in manual mode. We weren't even anticipating jumping on this early. But I mean, we're getting some indications here. There could already be some golf balls, right? So 2-inch in diameter. Again, you're getting up around, ping pong to maybe even some golf balls, right? And again, even where you're seeing the areas of red, that could easily be some half dollars. So 35 here, there's the split, there's Denton. Again, UNT campus would be right about there. And again, like I mentioned, it's an easterly push, but there's a little bit of a southeasterly wobble. So again, if you're going to be driving through these areas, obviously this would be the 380 here, 35, that would be the Sanger exit. If you, again, maybe work in Denton, but you need to go back home, Sanger, even back up into parts of Cook County, folks do commute down, from our northern counties, even down into Denton and stuff. Keep that in mind. This will be crossing 35, and again, it's got a pretty decent little hell core with it. Right now, the big concern is the hell core. As that gets, into more of an urban area, it's putting down a pretty good push of rain, and there could even be some localized flooding concerns with that, again, as it does move in as well. Let me go and clear this off. I just want to do our due diligence. I just want to take a look here at the velocities. And it's on the backside. This is not overly concerning right now. And I just want to preface this only for the fact supercells, they rotate by nature, right? A rotating cell typically, not always, but typically is a supercell. And the fact that we do have some rotation on the back end of it is not alarming, and it's not surprising right now, okay? That's one of the reasons why even on the back side of it, we've got that hell core, right? That hell core potentially coming up to golf balls. So we'll watch it. I mean, there is a mezzo on the back side of it. Right now, this is nothing alarming, but even if that area spin continues as vigorous as it is right now, again, the hell sizes more than likely would not decrease at all. They would not decrease as that moves deeper into parts of Denton County. So let's come back over to normal radar mode. And again, if you're just now joining us here on Weather Tracker TV, again, this is a supercell. It just came up. Now, this is not really the activity. I mean, we've got other activity coming in from the northwest as we go through the evening and as we get deeper into the evening. So this is not necessarily even what we were expecting yet. But again, it's here. We're dealing with this. And then, like I mentioned, we will definitely have more activity coming in. So if you're seeing this now, and it moves through your area, don't say, well, we're done, because we're not done, right? We have another fairly decent push coming in later on. But again, right now, this is a pretty classic North Texas supercell here. It's a supercell shape. And again, obviously, you can see the black on the back edge of it, a little sprinkling of white in it as well. That's where the hell core is, right? Anytime you get above pink on the radar with the areas of black and white showing up there, that's a fairly vigorous hell core. I want to lapse this just one more time, and I hate to keep walking off screen, but let me go and lapse this again and roll this back into movie mode, just for the fact we're tracking the motion so carefully here, because it is moving off to the east, but there's definitely a southeasterly component to this. And I think it's now more than likely where initially it looked like it was maybe going to try and just stay north of the 380. I think this is going to push a little more southeasterly, maybe curve right into Denton. Okay, I think this is going to maybe curve right into Denton. So if you're between Sanger all the way down to Denton, and even though you're not necessarily in the warning, but even down toward the Argyle area, even back over through Corinth, again, heads up on this, right? This is a pretty mean storm. Like I mentioned, we've got a really decent jet stream on top. You know, through the summer months, we don't deal with any of this, and it's really been since May since we've talked about stuff like this. The jet stream is energized. It's kicked in today, and again, even though this has developed well ahead of any of the activity we're anticipating later this evening, I think that jet stream is going to sustain this. So I wouldn't imagine this weakening anytime soon, right? So this could push through Denton County, and it could even push through parts of Collin County, again, as a supercell shape, okay? So we do want to keep that in mind. And again, we do want to keep in mind that hail potential with this as well. We really want to keep in mind that hail potential with this. I want to come back over to the hail core tracker because again, with this right now, it's the big story. I'm going to zoom this out just one more time for anyone else here in the Metroplex, right? I know it's the evening commute, and again, what's the biggest question always? It's our cars, right? It's hail and cars. They don't mix, but right now, this is the only activity in the Metroplex. And again, just to reiterate one more time, this is not even what we're anticipating later this evening. I'll zoom this out one more time. We've got other activity firing out on the dry line, other supercell shapes. You can see them out there around Childress. That's what's coming in for later this evening, right? But this is just kind of got a head start on us. So let's go and zoom back in. And again, the storm is quite severe, and this is kind of a precursor of some of the other stuff that we may see as we go through the evening. We'll more than likely see more of a complex. The other supercells should kind of morph into a complex. But again, this is a pretty mean, severe storm, and it's always kind of, you know, that first severe weather day when we come out of the long summer months when, you know, we don't even talk about severe weather, and we've had folks even move to North Texas. They have no idea what's going on with any of this, and, you know, all the folks who, you know, kind of are new to town, typically they don't necessarily subscribe to cable, right? So they're using like Roku, Apple, Amazon Fire TV, and so, you know, they're using us as their weather channel. So we always try and be really descriptive and maybe a little, you know, sounds a little, you know, kind of elementary at times, just for the new folks in town, because not everyone understands this, right? I mean, if you've lived here for a while, you're from the Southern Plains, you understand what's going on, obviously, but again, not everyone does, right? So we just want to be real clear about that as well. But let's come back over to that hail core tracker. And again, we'll take a look inside of this. This has got a really mean hail core. And, you know, we could be sampling some golf ball plus size hail on this as well. Let's go and see what the Weather Service is saying here. I'm just looking here quickly. Yeah, the Weather Service, they're more than likely going to extend this warning a little bit further to the south. This storm has gone up extremely fast. In fact, I'm looking at a different radar product over here. I'm just trying to quickly look at the top of this storm. And again, we continue to notate quite a bit of shear within this storm, especially at the mid-levels. But let me go and take a look just quickly here. And yeah, we're pushing up well over now 50,000 feet with the top of this storm. That's important, especially when we're talking about hail potential, right? We know we've got the shear, we've got the rotation. The hail core, I'm going to resample this, and I hate to keep walking off the screen. You just see a larger area blue. And the radar may be overdoing this ever so slightly. You know, we always try and be a little conservative with this product, but time and time again, when it looks big, and you say, it may not be quite that big, typically it is, right? So let me go and resample this one more time. You know, I mean, you hate to say we're going on 3-inch, you know, you hate to say that. We say that every time, and then we normally get, you know, a report of a huge hailstone, right? Up to 3 inches or maybe even larger. So we're going to say it's golf ball, could even be larger than golf ball. You folks in Crum, this is real important for you now, right? It's moving directly towards Crum and then eventually towards 35. I mean, there's the split right there. There would be Denton, UNT here. So we're talking about the 380. So any interest on the 380 out towards Crum and to the north, at least right now, this is a heads up. This is some big hail moving in your direction. And again, you start getting up around golf ball, you start getting a little bit bigger than golf ball. And again, keep in mind, that can do some real damage, and that can get real concerning real quick. So let's go and clear this off. And that's a new sweep. I just want to sample this one more time. I mean, it's basically giving us the same. Again, there's no guarantee it's at 3, but again, could we wager that it's at golf ball, maybe a little bigger? And the answer to that is probably yeah. So the Weather Service, they may have to go and reconfigure this warning, maybe to include a little bit further to the south, right? This storm is now turning a little more southeast. In fact, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's almost curving right into Denton. Again, if you were joining us a few minutes ago, it looked like mainly it was almost going to try and stay north of the 380. Right now it's curving. It's moving right towards Denton. But again, you folks in Crum, heads up, maybe even as far south as Ponder. You folks in Ponder are right there on the razor edge of the warning anyway. As far south as Argyle, again, we're even talking about Highland Village. We're talking about Corinth, 35E here. Of course, 35W there. Any of those areas need to prepare, again, for some big hail coming in. And again, if you're new to the area, stay away from windows, right? Again, kiddo at home, parents aren't home yet, stay away from windows, again, as this moves through, right? Especially your westerly and northwesterly windows, you start getting golf ball plus size hail, maybe add in a little 60-mile-per-hour wind, and again, you could easily blow out some windows, right? So westerly, northwesterly windows, make sure you stay away from those. But again, any windows truly you need to be staying away from. Skylights, anything like that. Again, just stay in an interior part of your home, again, as this moves through. It's not a tornado situation. Nothing like that is going on. But again, big hail can still cause some damage. And again, you get a couple windows blown out. Again, you can get some lacerations and things like that. So please keep that in mind. Real serious here as this does move in. It's going to be tracking right along the 380, possibly as far south as Ponder. But more so, this is going to be some pretty significant hail the way it looks, trying to move into the Denton area. Just for the heck of it, let's come back over to velocities. And we'll just continue just to kind of look at the back side of this. Right now, everything looks clean. There is a small area of rotation. It's where our hail core is. Again, this is nothing even remotely concerning right now. But again, you can see the shear on the back side of it where the red and green are coming together. It's a weak meso embedded within the supercell. Supercells, if you're new, by nature, they rotate. They always have a mesocyclone. Just because something has a mesocyclone doesn't mean it poses any tornado threat whatsoever, right? It could just be, like in this situation, currently a large hail threat, but as long as the storm continues to spin, it sustains its hail, right? As the mesocyclone gets a little weaker, you'll see the hailstones get a little bit smaller. If the mesocyclone strengthens any, that's when the hailstones get bigger. So really, even looking at the raw velocity bins here, we can almost in real time tell you exactly what's going on with that hail core as well. But again, you can see just right now, it's a pretty weak meso. I mean, honestly, it's really not even that impressive there, again, on the back side. So let's come back over to normal radar mode and look at that white. I mean, you never want to see it, right? The two colors on weather radar, we say this all the time, you don't want to see, it's black going to white. There's no more colors, right? So even if the radar wanted to say, hey, let's put on whatever, there's no additional colors. It's out of colors, right? So we know it's what we call maximum reflectivity. It's maxed out, and again, it's a sign of, again, big hail. You can see the curvature on the backside. You can almost see the little finger trying to come around there. Again, that's where that meso I was talking about is, and that's, again, exactly where that hail core is wrapped up in there as well. Supercell shape here, so this is concerning, again, mainly from a hail threat here coming into Denton. But again, even if you're down in like Lake Dallas, any of these communities down here on 35E, like even down towards Louisville, Lake Louisville, locations like that, heads up, this may try and slide more southeasterly than easterly, okay? Even Argyle, heads up on this as well. Again, this will do some real damage. And again, you just see the latest sweep. In fact, let me go and put the live beam on here. Let me go and put this in the live mode so we don't have to wait 2 minutes. Let me look at something else quickly here. Like I mentioned, we're kind of scrambling here just a little bit. We weren't necessarily anticipating being on quite yet. I'm just seeing what the Weather Service has the NEXRAD in, and I'm just seeing if they've put it into a supplemental, and they haven't yet. So, and again, you can see still on the back side, it's almost going to be a little Susie Q hook. You can almost just see that little finger on the back side. Again, has nothing to do with anything tornadic. But more times than not, again, when we have the big hailers in North Texas, the sustained big hailers, we get that little Susie Q hook on the back, and that might be what's trying to develop. You just see that little finger notch there on the back side. And again, 9 times out of 10, Again, sustained big hail supercells in North Texas. You'll get that little Susie Q on the back, and that may, very evidently be what's trying to develop right there. So the bottom line is, even as far north as Sanger, right, on 35W, the Sanger exit, again, all the way down through 380, right? We're talking about the 380 corridor from Crum all the way into Denton, maybe as far south of 380 as the Ponder area, Argyle heads up, Lake Dallas, even as far south as Louisville, right? It may not get that far south, but again, even as far south as Louisville, heads up on this. Let's come back over to the hail core tracker, and in fact, we're going to lapse this, and you can see the reflectivity maximizing there. And we've got a new little cell coming up here too, down around, speaking of Louisville, right? Let's just go and zoom this out quickly. Anything that develops, we're extremely unstable, and we have an extremely powerful jet stream over top. And I've mentioned this a couple times, but if you're just now joining us, the reason this activity is developing, but you see the counties in blue, the severe thunderstorm watch well back to the northwest, we have stuff developing along a dry line out near Childress. That's what's going to be coming in the deeper we get into the evening, right? This is developed way ahead of anything we were anticipating, but even this going up right here, near Louisville, that needs to be watched as well. So again, for most of the Metroplex, at least right now in time, currently, it's quiet. So for the evening commute, Dallas County, Tarrant County, right now it's quiet. Collin County, right now it's quiet, but again, what we have kind of lurking, if you will, off to our northwest, moving through Denton County, we've got a supercell. It's a big hell supercell. We've got something else trying to develop now down around Louisville. No guarantee that continues to mature, but exactly where this tracks or anything else that tries to develop ahead of what we're anticipating later this evening, again, could pose a big hell threat, right? So if you're in the Metroplex, if you're in Dallas County, you're in Tarrant County, again, right now the hail threat, everything looks okay, but again, really stay vigilant, right? And I would not venture, again, too far from home, again, especially if this could be potentially moving into your neck of the woods, right, as we go through the evening. Because, you get quarter-size hail, you get half-dollar size hail, minimal severe type stuff. We know that's not going to do damage to the car, right? You start talking about golf balls, you get bigger than golf balls, you're going to get major damage to your car, number one, but again, also, potentially to your home, your boat, anything else that could be outdoors, anything else that could be exposed, right? So it turns much more serious once you start getting to that 2-inch plus size hail. Here's going to be a new beam coming around. I'm going to pause this. Let me go and zoom this in. And so it came down just a touch. You can still see that inflow notch there on the backside, right? So here's the inflow notch right back in here. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is where the storm is truly breathing, if you will, right? For lack of a better expression, this is where it's breathing. This is where the areas spin, again, with no tornado threat, but just this is where the meso is, right? It's where it's spinning, and again, on the top side, this is where that hail core is, right? So those are kind of the features within the storm right now that we're watching. I want to look at the velocities again, and it's not a real clean look here. In fact, let me go and move the beam up with height just a little bit here, and again, we'll look just a little bit further up within the storm. We may not. In fact, we may just leave it there right now momentarily. But again, you can just see just kind of that broad area share there on the back side. So here's what we're going to do. Let's come back over to live mode. We'll come back over to live mode, and we're going to lapse this. This thing, was almost moving easterly. It's turned so southeasterly now. The Weather Service, more than likely, I'll have to look at the weather wire again and see what they're saying. This is almost turning due southeasterly. The hail core may even miss Denton. Now, there could still be some hail in here. We don't want to say it's going to completely miss Denton. Obviously, very heavy rain moving in. But the true hail core is almost moving now more towards Ponder, North Lake, Argyle, 35W, Texas Motor Speedway. Well, look how it's turned. Literally, it was an easterly motion, and it's now moving almost southeasterly. If you're in Denton, again, you're not out of the woods, but it's better than that huge hail core moving directly through town. But it looks like that is going to trace now a little more southeasterly. Are you folks seeing that as well? It's a little more of a southeasterly push. So Ponder, North Lake, and again, you folks aren't even in the warning yet. Right? You have literally no warning now because, again, this has just turned. You can see, again, on the back side of it, that little Susie Q hook trying to come around. That's where the storm is breathing. But, again, this is a big-time supercell. So, again, if I'm in North Lake, if I'm in Argyle, Double Oak, Texas Motor Speedway, again, any of those, again, new additions, even back down there around Texas Motor Speedway, west of 35W, heads up. I mean, we're even talking maybe as far south as the Justin area, right? I mean, heads up on this, but this has turned more south-southeasterly, right? We're still watching that cell over on 35E, over around Louisville. That's just bubbled up right now. I mean, it's a thunder shower. I mean, right? So nothing crazy going on. It's going to move across the lake. That's Lake Louisville right there. But this is what we're watching. And again, moments ago, 15 minutes ago when we jumped on the air, this was almost moving due easterly. I mean, we were thinking it was maybe going to stay north of 380. It started to turn a little more southeasterly. We started to jump up and down for Denton. It's turned south-southeasterly. And I mean, literally, not even in a warning yet, it's moving right towards Ponder. It's moving right towards Argyle. And again, it's that 35W corridor all the way down through TMS, Texas Motor Speedway. Heads up on this, right? So easily an opportunity still of golf ball size hail. And so you can just see how, you get these supercells out here by themselves, how variable this can be. Let me just look at the weather wire here. And again, just see if there's anything new coming in. And it looks like literally 1 minute ago there was. Okay, so they're continuing the warning to the north, and more than likely they're going to configure a warning coming out a little bit further to the south, okay? So, again, not to jump ahead of our friends at the Weather Service, but again, like if you're in Ponder, Argyle, again, Corinth, again, that 35W Texas Motor Speedway corridor, Justin, again, any of those locations, heads up, right? This is moving now more so in your direction, right? So the speed, or the direction rather, it's become a little more variable, a little unpredictable, so to speak, but again, it is pushing south-southeasterly. So again, just looking for any shear in the mezzo on the backside. It's there, but again, it still continues to only be a hail concern. I want to come back over to the hail core tracker here. And again, we'll see if we can pop that up. I'm just looking to see what the NexRad is in, what mode the NexRad is in here, but it's still, we'll have to come back to it. We may only get a hail core now every other scan once the NexRad goes into different modes, but I'm not necessarily seeing that it's in a different mode. But let me go and lapse this again. And again, you hate to say it's good news, but you see the hail core, maybe coming down in intensity just a little bit. We say this all the time with supercells, they cycle, right? We deal here in North Texas and really in the Southern Plains, so to speak, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, we deal with cyclic supercells, right? They cycle up, they cycle down. They're truly living, breathing machines, right? I mean, that little inflow notch, that's where it's literally breathing in its life, right? And so sometimes you'll see them begin to come down in intensity, and if you're a radar operator, you're on live with folks like we are here, you're saying, it's coming down, this is good news, and then people, mentally, they're like, okay, it's coming down, whew, breathe out, right? Everything is good now, but then they cycle right back up, right? It's a short-term evolution that they go through, and then sometimes they come back even stronger. Don't want to say that's happening with this one. It's still got severe hail. You can still see the area black, but you're obviously not seeing the white. There's the new warning. Okay, so the Weather Service extending now from Ponder, Argyle, all the way down through TMS, Texas Motor Speedway. That would be the Justin community included as well. Corinth, all the way down through Louisville, Lake Dallas. Again, any of those locations, even Double Oak, again, heads up on that. Let me get the timeline here on the new warning. So again, the big question right now is, is this going cyclic? Are we seeing maybe a bit of a downturn, which would be good, or is it just a temporary downturn? Now, when I say downturn, I mean it's still severe. I mean this is still more than likely posing an opportunity of golf balls. But is it bigger than golf balls right now? Probably not. Let me get the information on the warning. So the new warning is until 6:45, and again, it's basically just for southern Denton County, right? So new warning until 6:45. And again, it is basically here, again, just for southern Denton County, as we're seeing. You're seeing the yellow, what we call polygon, the box there light up in yellow. And again, like I mentioned, the main communities, obviously, that it's for that we were just mentioning there. Again, it is going to be Ponder, Argyle, Texas Motor Speedway, Justin, back over through Corinth, even, again, as far to the east as Louisville. Again, heads up on that as well. Let me go and lapse this. I want to do two things. I just want to look. I'm just looking over here at a different product that we have. at a completely different radar source. You know, I'll tell you the one thing, folks, we got to watch here as well. There could be some really gusty wind with this. I'm seeing the tops of this. This one went up so quickly. I'm seeing the tops have come down by almost 10,000 feet. We're seeing a little bit more of a bow. And I'm getting concerned maybe about some wind. We may have to switch to the Love Field radar and look at some wind with this. But that little bow and the fact that the cloud top has now come down by 10,000 feet, 10,000 feet of cloud coming down, it's got to push the air out somehow. And this could also be a wind event. There's still hail here for sure, but the bow, I'm getting concerned now about some wind. And again, there could be some wind in excess of 70 from Denton, and in fact, all the way back over through the 380. Let's go and take a look at this one more time here. And let's see if we can try and capture that in the next rad. Like I said, we may have to switch over, and I think we're beginning to see that here. We may have to switch over to the Love Field radar. So green is going to be towards the radar. The radar is going to be south of Fort Worth, down in the Burleson area. We just want to see if we see more green pixels beginning to develop within that, right? And that may let us know that the storm is kind of gusting out a little bit. It's a supercell. They don't necessarily gust out, quote unquote, different than kind of like a multi-cell type storm. But I think we're seeing that. The storm, again, it's just come down. The top of it has just come down since we spoke by about 10,000 feet. And again, we're just beginning to see this little bow as well. It's still got big hail. It's still broad shear rotating to sustain its hail core. But where you see this pink line right here, I think there's some gusty wind, right? And the reason for that, again, as the cloud top comes down, the wind gusts out, it kind of creates a bow, right? It fans out, it pushes out the rain. And I think we're seeing that right here. And that could also be good. That could be a weakening sign. Eventually could be a weakening sign with this. But I think we're getting some pretty gusty wind here as well. We're just not capturing it within the next rad. It's right on the fringes of the Love Field radar site. It's a different type of radar. It only goes out by about 75 miles with good data. And that's over in northern Dallas County. So right now we're just on the fringes of the Love Field radar. Again, we're shooting this right now from the next rad south of Fort Worth. But I think we're getting some wind gusts here. So even you folks in Ponder, still an opportunity of hail, yes. But again, from North Lake Argyle back down towards Corinth, again, heads up, hail and a wind potential with this. I'm just looking here. Weather Service still thinking around 60 miles per hour. They're bringing that hail size down a little bit here as well. I want to come back over to the hail core tracker. And we'll try and catch that. Like I mentioned, it's the radar's in a different mode. We're only getting that now every other sweep. And I think the last two times we've hit it, we've just kind of hit it in between those sweeps. So, you know, you hate to say good news, right? It's still severe, but I mean, compared to where we were, this storm is definitely morphing. I want to give you the broad view. Let me go and zoom this out. And I'm going to lapse this. And I've widened it all the way out to even look out in the rolling plains. And the reason why, you know, what we're really going to be watching as we go through the evening, we're watching this, right? This kind of jumped up out of nowhere. We weren't really anticipating that. I think there's a weakening trend with this. I think the supercellular components of that are now falling apart. I think it's gusting out. I think we're going to see that weaken. But what we're going to be watching deeper into the evening, it's that line of supercells developing out there around Childress, right? That's going to be inbound as we go through the evening. First arriving in our northwestern counties, may morph into more of a complex overnight, but still 10 p.m. to maybe around midnight, approaching the DFW Metroplex. Again, that's the timeline right now. Could still change a little bit, but that's the way it looks right now. So we're really watching what's out there to the northwest. And again, we've kind of got this little appetizer going on right now, so to speak, up here in Denton County. So let's go and zoom back in. Yeah, I mean, and even as you look at this, right, I mean, it's losing its supercell shape, number one. That's good. But number two, there is some gusty wind coming in here. And like I said, right now, it's just in a weird position. We can't necessarily capture it with the Love Field radar. We're not really getting a good look with the next rad either. But again, where you're just kind of seeing this bow shape in this, there's some wind, right? And I mean, you can even see the reflectivity, some of the pinks now beginning to wane and go away. This storm is now rapidly coming down. In fact, you can even kind of see the weak echo region right there in the middle. Again, that's as the cloud tops are coming down, and it's now literally fanning out. This is almost like a huge downburst signature with this storm. Again, winds 60, maybe 65 miles per hour, not impossible. In Denton right now, could even be up to 70. That may not be impossible either. But again, some of the gusty winds will be moving down towards Argyle, and then back over through Ponder. Still a decent little hail core over around Ponder. Could still be some half dollars, maybe even a little bit larger than half dollars. Moving towards Ponder. But again, like I said, this may be transitioning to more of a wind threat until we really figure out what's going to be happening with the cell. Looking over here at a different radar source. And again, the cloud tops, I mean, we went from 50,000 earlier. We're now down to about 30. So, I mean, this cell's literally lost 20,000 feet very quick. And again, that has to go somewhere, right? That downward momentum, right? That wind has to go somewhere. It goes down to the surface and then it fans out. We're still getting, for lack of a better term, kind of some hot reflectivity, right? That you see the darker blacks and the whites showing up right there around Ponder. The rest of the cell, even the heavier rain, it's raining hard in Denton right now, yes, but it appears as though the hail threat in Denton right now at this very second is more minimal. I want to come back over to the hail core tracker. And let me go and click this here. And there we go. Now we're finally getting a look inside of it. Like I mentioned, the mode the radar's in, we only get this now every other sweep. The one little decent pocket of hail, and again, the radar's probably overestimating this just a little bit at this point. Again, also you have to remember it's hot out there, right? DFW today, 96 degrees today. There were parts of Tarrant County that were 98, right? So, I mean, it was a very hot afternoon. But again, you can see, could there still be some quarters, maybe some half dollars, mainly south of Denton now, over here in 35E. So not impossible there, okay? And then the only other real pocket of hail, it's going to be right over, really on the eastern sides of Ponder. That's going to be drifting down towards North Lake, okay? Then maybe as far south as the Justin area, okay? Also over towards Coral City, you can see there as well. The computer is still trying to say 2. It's probably not quite that big. Could be some half dollars, maybe a little bit bigger than that. Argyle, maybe some shot size hail moving through, some smaller hail. You can see it there. And again, Denton, more than likely, this has already moved through the Denton area proper. Okay, so there's more than likely at least some quarters, maybe some half dollars that moved through Denton. But again, compared to what it looked like, 20 minutes ago, when truly this was still in supercell form, much better situation with this now. Okay, much better situation with this. Let's go and clear this, and I'm going to just lapse the hail core. Let me just lapse the hail core here quickly. And even down towards Highland Village, right? We're just talking about that 35E corridor, right, from Corinth down towards Highland Village. Maybe again as far, if it really still is able to maintain its intensity, maybe even as far south as the Lake Louisville area, Lake Dallas, the city of Lake Dallas. Heads up there, and then like I said, also right there along that 35W corridor. So the good news is, literally, we had a really beefy supercell that was moving through Denton County, didn't look good as far as large hail potential went, and literally within the last 15 minutes or so, we've seen this thing, almost gust out, and I truly think this is almost a bit of a downburst signature. You can see the hotter reflectivity up there near Sanger. This thing is flat. This has come down 20,000 feet, right? The top of the storm has come down 20,000 feet, right? So all that air from those clouds, from the cloud tops, rushing down. I almost think besides the hail threat, again, we're almost seeing a downbursting, just a large downbursting signal. Typically those will be teeny tiny, but I think we're seeing that, right? There's just a lot of air coming out of the storm. So I think there's some gusty wind, maybe even as far north still as Sanger. You wouldn't think it, but I think there's maybe even some gusty wind up around the Sanger area as well. Okay, let's go and zoom this out one more time. I know for other folks in the Metroplex, again, if you're watching on Roku, Apple, Amazon Fire TV, or on our mobile app, just kind of wondering what's going on and is this going to impact your evening commute. Let me go and center this up. And again, we'll go and lapse this. And right now it's still it's essentially rolling down 35E. So it's kind of in a steady state, right? We really saw it get its act together. It really, kind of went into overdrive mode with the hail sizes. It came down. It's still got some hail. It's still got some wind. It's still severe, but it's not necessarily still weakening, right? It's still kind of now at that steady state. It turned a little more southeasterly, almost south-southeasterly, but look at the motion now. It's almost back to southeasterly. It's like it was trying to merge on the 35E, and it's literally just kind of rolling down 35E now, eventually, right? And so, even if you're in southern, even portions now of southeastern Denton County, kind of regardless of really even where the wind is, just stay alert to this storm. Definitely not as severe as it was, but again, this is still quite a severe storm. Again, may even try and move down towards far northern Tarrant County, maybe even northern portions of Dallas County as well. Right, so again, if your evening commute is a little bit later in the evening, what time is it now? We're going on 6 p.m. Yeah, so if your commute's a little bit later in the evening, keep that in mind. Not impossible by, 6:30. If it is able to hold together, 6:30, maybe 7, again, moving down into parts of Tarrant and into Dallas County. It is able to hold together. I want to zoom this out. And I want to just take a look out here. And I'm going to switch this into composite radar, just into our national radar. And I want to look at these. This is what's coming in for later this evening. And I mean, we've just got a broken line of supercells, and these are really just now getting their act together out around Childress. And again, these look pretty tough. They're still long ways out there. Right, they're still long ways out there. They're out around Childress. I mean, they'd have to go through Wichita Falls. I mean, they've got a long track to make. But again, this is pretty much what the data was showing. Kind of a trio, so to speak, of supercells going up. And then it looks as though they'll eventually morph more into a complex as they come in just a little bit later on this evening. Let me just show you a future radar. And again, let me just go and cue this really quick here. And this is going to be future radar. Let me grab my clicker. And we'll just walk you through, right? So now here's the only discrepancy, right? In the future radar, we have the ending shower still off here to the northeast, right? So all that's on schedule, but what are we missing in between all of this? No big supercell, right? The model didn't depict that, right? So we didn't have a big supercell developing there, right? So everything kind of on schedule. We were anticipating showery activity ending. Here we are going on 7 p.m. Everything else basically quiet, not a lot going on, until we get a little bit later in the evening. Then here's what we're anticipating by later this evening, again, coming in there from the northwest, right? You see the timeline, 9:30, and again, any of that could be quite severe. And again, there's 11 p.m. moving into the Metroplex. Again, here's midnight moving through the Metroplex. So I think we're still on schedule with all of this. It's mainly going to be later this evening, but we've just had to deal with this one cell that, again, kind of popped up out of nowhere, was a supercell of all things. And again, it's just kind of giving us some problems, right? So then all that moves through overnight. And I just want to remind you one more time, by sunrise tomorrow morning, one more complex could be moving out of Oklahoma as well. So we have several rounds of active weather, over the next, 8 to 10 hours or so, right? So it's not just a one-hit deal. It's not just a two-hit deal, but it's going to be a three-hit deal the way it looks, okay? So we just want to keep that in mind. Again, obviously, we're just reminding you just for the fact, again, we're just coming out of the hot, dry summer months. I mean, what have we talked about for the last 3 months? All we've talked about are record highs and 100-degree temperatures, right? We haven't been talking about supercells, so just a reminder. Okay, let me come back over to live radar. We'll put this back into NextRad. And we'll go and zoom back in. And yeah, this continues to weaken. It's still severe, right? It's still severe, but it definitely continues to weaken from where it was. And I still think there's some gusty wind. Let me cue some velocities here. We're not getting a good look. Again, we're looking at this, again, just from the NextRad. I'm just going to sample some of this. And we're sampling this from range. I mean, we're not really going to get a good reading on this anyway. But again, we're not getting necessarily I hate to use the term in this situation. It's not really a gust front, but it's just kind of along the leading edge, some gusty wind. We're not really seeing that necessarily on NextRad, but I think the overall reflectivity presentation of this, how it's just kind of flattened out. We have kind of the weakened reflectivity in the middle. And again, just looking at the cloud tops over here, I mean, they've almost come down another 10,000 feet. I mean, we've still got some 30,000 feet cloud tops right along the leading edge, but a lot of them, I mean, this has gone from 50 now almost down to 20. And again, that's pushing a lot of air out, right? It's got to push some air down. And that's what's happening. Let's come back over to the Hell Core tracker. And even the Hell Core becoming a little more minimal, right? It's now down closer to quarters. Maybe some half dollars still in there, but a lot of this is mainly quarters. Quarter-size hail is minimal severe hail, right? When the Weather Service is thinking about issuing a severe thunderstorm warning, there's two things they look at. They look at hail size. Is it at 1 inch? What the computer shows, but then they kind of, they do their due diligence. Do they think it's at 1 inch? And do they think there's, 58 to 60 mile per hour winds? So right now the computer is still saying could still be some 1 inch, could even be some half dollar size hail. Again, over here. This is 35E from Corinth down through Highland Village. So, technically this is still severe, but again, when we were maybe larger than golf balls, I mean, we've come down significantly, right? So we've gone from, very severe, very concerning, moving at that time towards Denton, and very concerned about large hail moving in to still severe, yes, but again, more in the way of minimally severe. Not to take away from it, but again, more in the way of minimally severe. So it's coming up to the edge of the polygon, the warning, okay, this hail core, it's moving right down 35 east. So again, from Highland Village all the way down through Louisville, right? Lake Louisville, it's a heads up, right? I mean, you don't want to be on 35E over there driving up and down. We know it's the evening commute. A lot of folks trying to, leave Dallas County, go back to Denton County, and vice versa. But again, it's a pretty decent little hail core right over Highland Village. And again, almost right there at the Louisville Lake Bridge. I'm trying to look on here. It looks like it may actually be right over the Louisville Lake Bridge there. So again, if you're familiar with that area, moving down towards the city of Louisville. But the other thing to keep in mind, the Weather Service, they may have to extend this warning a little further to the east, because you can see that hail core just trying to venture a little bit further to the east here. I'm just looking at the weather wire. Let me see if there's any reports. We've been on here kind of going gangbusters with this. I just want to see if we did get any reports coming in. We're getting some reports of some pretty heavy rain, maybe even 4 inches in Denton. Let's look at some rainfall estimates. You start getting, you hear 4 inches, and in the back of your mind, you're always kind of scratch your head a little bit, right? So we're switching around here. This is just going to be 1 hour totals. And that is important. I mean, it is an important fact, right? I mean, people are driving home, and again, ponding on the roadways, can be a real big deal. Right? I mean, here in the Metroplex, we know, a couple raindrops is a really big deal. So, I mean, right over the last hour, I mean, based off the NextRad, I mean, it's saying about a half an inch. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, it sounds about right. We're really, the peak of the core was moving near Crum and back over to the west. Is it maybe around an inch over the last hour? Not impossible. And the thing we have to remember is that the big hail core was out there as well, right? So the radar reflectivity, where it was kind of maximized and it was bright white, this product does not necessarily have the way to know that that was more likely hail. It's thinking it was rain. So even those numbers are probably a little bit high. So, west of Crum, could we maybe have had an inch? We'll kind of take that down a little bit. Not impossible, but around Denton, I mean, we're seeing about a half an inch. So, I mean, like I said, we're getting a few interesting reports off the wire. So I'm not sure about the 4 inch. So we'll just kind of do our due diligence on that. Possible, but probably not likely based off of what we're seeing. Again, I'm just quickly looking here. Again, if there's anything else coming in. Yeah, the one report, and this is a pretty reputable one, if I can say, that was almost a tongue twister, reputable report here from Denton. They only had about, they're saying 1/4 inch. It was probably a little bit bigger than that, but I think Denton, for the most part, was really spared that hail core. When it really looked like it was going to be golf balls plus and there could be very significant damage coming into Denton, I think they were more than likely spared. That hail core went well to the west, and then it was dramatically coming down at the same time. But again, getting some reports there, that's off the ham. And again, that sounds about right as well. I mean, that sounds about right as well. There was probably some quarter, maybe some $half dollar. That's a little bit bigger than even what that report is, but just based off of what we saw here on radar. So it looked like a very concerning situation, to not good, because you don't want hail, you don't even want severe weather, obviously, but in the grand scheme of things, better than what it could have been. So what do we have going on now? I want to zoom this out one more time. Again, just for the Metroplex, right? So again, if you're in Dallas County, if you're in Tarrant County, at this second, everything is okay. In fact, really, even if you're in Collin County, at this second, everything is okay. There is some showery activity in Collin County north of 380. Not really a big deal. That's going to kind of venture over towards the 75 Anna Melissa area. Again, kind of just some raindrops with that, right? Not necessarily a big deal. What we're watching, though, as we go a little bit deeper in time, is kind of what's left of the supercell. We'll see. I mean, it could still come back to life. It's still severe, but it's not necessarily quote-unquote a supercell. But again, is it cyclic? Does it reorganize itself? And does it begin to come back to life? It's not impossible. We got a really strong jet stream overhead. It's not impossible. And so the question with that would be, if it were to re-energize and come back to life, you can almost see that little appendage trying to develop there around Ponder. What's the motion? Where is this moving, right? Right now it's moving right down 35E. It would take it more so towards northwestern Dallas County, through southeastern Denton County, maybe far northwestern, northeastern rather, Tarrant County, right? So there's no guarantee. There's been a dramatic weakening trend, and that dramatic weakening trend could continue. And maybe as it makes it down in there, it's not even severe and it's no big deal, right? Or does it maintain itself, it stays severe, or does it even come back to life? So that's kind of the question right now. No one knows, right? I mean, the modeling, we showed you the model a second ago, didn't even have this. Had everything else perfect, but it didn't have this lone supercell that developed ahead of everything else. So your guess right now is as good as mine. So, but we'll track this. I mean, like I said, it's moving down 35E. We'll see what the Weather Service does with the warning. The good news is nowhere near as severe as it was earlier, right? Nowhere near as severe, but a severe storm is a severe storm, and all of that matters, right, in the grand scheme of things. So let's go and pause the loop, and we'll take it out of movie mode. Let's go and zoom it back in. And again, right now the structure still looks pretty raggedy, right? In the back of your mind, if you live in North Texas or if you're new to North Texas, anytime you've dealt with a supercell and you see it begin to weaken and it changes shape on you, in the back of your mind, what are you always doing? You're always waiting to see, again, does it come back to life, right? I mean, does it morph? Is it cyclic? Does it come back? And so we're waiting to see that. Right now, I mean, there's really no indication of that happening right now, again, whatsoever. I mean, right now, it's still a storm. It's still a severe storm, rather, I should say. But again, right now, there's no indication that anything more than that, again, is happening. I'm just looking at some new data here off the wire coming in, just trying to sift through a few more reports. You know, sometimes there's kind of some vague reports coming in or reports that really don't mean a whole lot. So again, still just looking at this. Yeah, the Weather Service, they're getting a pretty decent wind signature. I'm really not surprised by that whatsoever. Again, we've been talking about the gusty wind potential with this, and I'm truly really not surprised. What I want to do, we're going to switch over, and I hate to switch radars here with you, but we're going to come over to the Love Field radar. It's going to look a little bit different. You can still see the classic reflectivity here, but let me come over to velocities. These aerodome radars, or these radars that are at the airports, they're made more for what we're looking at here, for velocity bends, right? They're looking for any troubled flow coming near the airport or over the runways, and they're able to capture that in real time. So the radar is over here in northwestern Dallas County. It's actually not at Love Field. It's in northwestern Dallas County. And so the green would be wind moving towards that radar site, right? And so this little wind signature here, this is what the Weather Service is beginning to lock onto, right? And this is truly this is still a downbursting signature. If you look at this carefully, you have the green here moving away. You have you have an area of red. I know that sounds very basic, but you have an area of red, which is wind moving that direction. So we actually truly, this is a real downbursting signature. Let me clear this data off, and let me show you this one more time, because this can also be serious. You get these downbursts, and they can easily come up to 70 miles per hour. This is a real downburst signature, and it's happening right over what appears to be right over 35W. Right now, yeah, and it's happening now. You just saw the red get brighter. This is happening right now in real time. So this is wind moving this direction. Red is moving that direction. And so what happens is an updraft is now a downdraft. It's coming right back down. It hits the surface of the earth, and it fans out in every direction. So we're seeing it fan out this way. We're seeing it fan out that way. And so this is a downburst happening right now. So from Coral City, Argyle, maybe even back over through North Lake, 60 mile per hour winds for sure, maybe 65, maybe even 70. I mean, this is a real deal. Whenever you hear downburst, this is a real deal downburst signature. And again, it's happening right over 35W right now too. Again, for any high profile vehicles, semis, things like that, it's giving them some real problems right now. I can tell you that for sure. Let me lapse this. And look, you can just see, right? I mean, you can see this happening in real time. This is a 10-minute lapse. And again, you can just see how the red also just kind of materializes right there. And so it's a downburst. The downburst is moving off to the east. But again, there it is. I mean, literally in real time, we just caught a downburst. And again, it's happening right over 35W, Argyle, Coral City, North Lake, Ponder, even back over through Ponder. You folks in Ponder, that would be a westerly, by the way, again, or I'm sorry, that would be an easterly wind. That would be an easterly wind coming in. And again, it could be 60. Easily, right? You folks over in Argyle, again, even back over through, let me center this up a little bit more here. And again, where you're seeing the green, that would be a westerly wind. Back over through Cooper Canyon, Double Oak, Highland Village, Heads up, that area of green, you see how that green is just kind of moving on its own. That's gusty wind moving out from this. Double Oak specifically, potentially down towards Cooper Canyon, and then eventually down towards Flower Mound, right? So, but this is happening again right now in real time. We're catching that downbursting signature. I'm just zooming this out just to see if we see that anywhere else within the cell. And again, right now we're not. It's literally just happening right there in 35W. Kind of late to say now. Traffic on 35W not recommended, again, especially high-profile vehicles. It's going to be causing them some real issues. Again, I'm just looking at our heights over here, again, our cloud tops. And again, we're still right around 30. We haven't seen any additional dramatic decrease in height, right? So as the cloud top comes down, it's going to have to gust out the wind. Now, we saw that earlier when it came down from 50, and we kind of had that little bow develop within this, right? But now we have really a specific downdraft, right? It's not just kind of the whole storm kind of deflating, and there's gusty wind all around where we had the big, again, presentation, right, of the bow echo. Now we're getting kind of a centralized area where part of the storm, at least right now, truly is collapsing, and we're getting just one fairly significant downdraft. And you can literally, just imagine the wind. This is just so impressive. It's hard to catch these, but you can see how the red, how it almost just looks like it's blowing up like that. That's literally wind hitting the ground and then coming back up and fanning as the radar beam comes around. But you can almost just see, like if you had a water hose, right, and you were shooting water, how it almost has that effect with these, what we call velocity bends. Literally. So there's some gusty wind. That presentation of red, I don't know. I think that could be 70-mile-per-hour winds right there. That's a very impressive presentation for a downburst. You don't see something like this very often. Sometimes you'll see them and it will last for like a second and you'll get it for a couple sweeps on radar. But this storm is literally just putting, whatever this downdraft is, it's just putting down some air right now. So again, the bottom line is, again, if you're in Ponder, you've got some easterly winds coming in, could be again up to 60. If you're in Argyle, Double Oak, even down through Cooper's Canyon, you're going to have, that would be for you folks, a westerly wind coming in. And again, it's more of a northwesterly wind for you, but it's a similar story. Again, you may have some winds right up around 60 miles per hour. So again, it's a pretty dynamic deal happening here. It's all up in Denton County right now. Let's come back over to reflectivity. And again, we'll just kind of take one more look at this here. And again, you can just see how the whole cell is deflated, right? Again, if you're just now joining us, this was about as concerning as it could be 20 minutes ago. We had a supercell go up. What appeared to be on radar, golf ball plus size hail. It looked like it was moving east, north of 380. It curved, looked like it was moving right into Denton, during peak traffic, evening commute time with golf ball plus. And then for whatever reason, it turned almost south-southeasterly. The main hail core missed Denton, but then it became outflow dominant. And you can just see how the center of it has just collapsed. See all that weak reflectivity right up there? The center has just collapsed. We've seen it on radar as well. The cloud tops have literally come down. And so as most of it has come down, you can kind of see what we call a bow echo, right? You can see how it looks like a bow. So as the entire storm is slowly weakening and coming down, all that air is rushing out, right? But for some reason now we have a centralized area right over 35W where it's not the entire storm fanning out, but we've got a really decent downdraft coming down. And literally within these velocity bends, it looks like a water hose of air coming down, hitting the surface of the earth, and then fanning out. And we're seeing that presentation on radar. So if you're wondering what's going on, we don't typically talk about this exactly in North Texas, right? Normally we're looking for hooks, we're looking for a lot of other stuff, but we just have this now persistent downdraft. And let me put this back into live, and let me go and lapse this one more time. But they can be just as concerning, right? Because you can really get gusty wind. You can get it over 60 miles per hour. I think what you're seeing there in the red, it's becoming a little more diffuse. That downdraft is beginning to wane. But if you look at the red, look at it very carefully, how it looks like a water hose. You can actually see the velocity as it came down, spread out across the surface of the earth, and then kind of came up a little bit as well. That is a very impressive signature. It's not impressive in a good way. Because again, anything around 35W could have some wind damage. That easily could have been some 70-mile-per-hour winds. You can see on the other side, right? So as it comes down and flattens out, the green is what's moving again in the opposite direction. It's moving towards the radar site, so we wouldn't necessarily get that same presentation as the beam hits it. It's able to see kind of that splattering moving there off to the west. So, interesting in a scientific way, yes. But again, if you're on 35W, if you live in Coral City, Argyle, back through Double Oak, even back over through North Lake or Ponder, it's not that interesting for you, right? It's concerning because you have some gusty wind. Again, these aren't 90, these aren't 100 mile. I mean, this is nothing crazy. But again, 60, maybe up to 70 mile per hour wind. Again, it's severe wind. And again, that can do some real deal damage, right? So we know all about that. So let's come back over to normal mode, and let's go and lapse this. And again, right now the storm is just kind of in a steady state, right? I mean, it's still, semi-weakening, so to speak, compared to where it was. I mean, if you look at this compared to, again, the supercell shape we had earlier, I mean, you basically just kind of have this little linear piece. That's all that's left of it. But it's still moving. And in fact, it almost looks like it's picked up speed a little bit, right? I mean, it's just crawling right down 35E. Still severe. We'll see what the Weather Service does. I'll look at the weather wire, see if they're going to extend that warning or what their thinking is, if they might extend that warning. But again, you can see it just crawling right down 35E. Again, moving through Louisville, Lake Louisville there. And then again, maybe down towards Carrollton, right? Capel would be right back in here. This is the 635 extension out towards the big airport. There's Grapevine. And again, that's the direction it's moving in. But again, the bottom line is, compared to where it was, obviously nowhere near as severe. It's definitely gusted out, so we probably more than likely got most of the gusty wind out of it. And now it's just kind of a matter of seeing, will it sustain itself any longer with maybe the potential for some rain, maybe a little bit of hail mixed in with it as well. So let me just look at the wire here quickly. And it looks like, I would say probably more than likely the Weather Service are going to go ahead and issue a warning, more than likely for northeastern Tarrant County, maybe northwestern portions of Dallas County, and probably just going to extend that a little bit further. That's probably going to be coming out fairly soon. It's coming to the end. This is what we call a polygon, right? The yellow blinking box, the warning box is called a polygon. And so they're more than likely now going to extend that a little bit further to the south. And again, the main reason is because of the gusty wind, right? I mean, we just had that downbursting signature. Heaven forbid we have another one of those. Again, not that it's crazy, but 60, 70 mile per hour winds, that is severe. And if that were to happen, it would happen, again, if it were to happen, right? Asterisk on all of that. There's a new warning. You see that there, near this 35E corridor, because this right now is the stronger part of the storm. The other part of the storm is gusted out and it's basically weakened, right? It's kind of weakened below severe levels. But let's go and look at this new warning. And here it is. They're going to take it all the way down to downtown Dallas. The storm may not even make it. I mean, so if you're like our studios, we're just north of downtown. We'll see how far this makes it. There's no guarantee it even makes it that far if the weakening trend continues. But at least right now, that's where the warning is going. Let me just look at this here. And like I mentioned, they just now issued this. So I'm going to take a look at this. And it's going to be a little confusing because it's going to be for a couple different counties, right? It's mainly for Dallas County, but again, it is going to clip parts of Tarrant County, also again portions of Denton County as well. And again, this is going to be, let me just get the time on this quickly. Like I mentioned, it's just now populating here. And it's going to be until 7:15, okay? It's mainly into Dallas County, but again, you can see it clips far northeastern portions of Tarrant County, and it kind of fills back into parts of Denton County as well, right? So it's mainly this here is what they're warning on, and it's literally just tracing down 35E, right? Now, that's the motion with it right now. Again, the backside that just gusted out, again, right now, truly that is a little more kind of below severe levels. We'll see if it comes back to life. I've been talking about this throughout the late afternoon, early evening now with this cell. Sometimes they're cyclic, and even though they weaken, they begin to come back. This one, it's lost all of its supercell shape. The structure is no longer there, so this would not really be a cyclic supercell. I mean, it would really have to be something crazy for it to come back to that, right? So we'll just see, can it keep its kind of minimal momentum now as it tries to snake into Dallas County. But again, from where we were earlier, I mean, really, something absolutely crazy would have to happen for it to come back to life like that, right? I mean, if it still had its supercell shape, if the structure was still there, and it just kind of went through a weakening phase and then came back, that's one thing. But right now, I mean, again, compared to what we had, this is just, I mean, this is truly the leftovers, but it's still severe. And the bottom line is, it's still severe. And again, it could still produce a downburst. There could still be a downburst that occurs with this. So, the biggest concern with this, let me go and center this up. Because if it happened once, I mean, it can happen again. And again, since this is still kind of the stronger part of the storm, right over Louisville, Moving down, I mean, eventually going to be moving down towards Carrollton. I mean, there's Las Colinas, right? So that's northern Irving. We got the 635. This would be the extension, right? West of 35E, out towards the big airport, out towards Capel would be right in here too. So really Capel more than anything, right? Capel back over through Carrollton. Heads up. Again, not saying it is even going to have a downburst again, but if it were to continue to weaken and maybe had a bit of a downburst in the near term, that's where it would be. And possibly even as far south as Las Colinas, right? North Irving, just south there of 635. Okay, so right now, again, new warning till 7:15. Again, it does go, by the way, all the way down to downtown Dallas. We'll see, again, is this cell able to, kind of maintain its intensity and even make it that far? But again, the Weather Service did want to go and give that lead time just in case it did. Obviously, that makes sense. And again, right now we're just kind of dealing with what's left over of a supercell. I mean, this was, again, as this was moving near the Denton area, again, not that, a severe warning with it now is not concerning, but again, earlier, about 45 minutes ago, I mean, it was really looking concerning as it was possibly moving in with some larger hail. Here's what I want to do. I'm going to switch. Right now we're in the Love Field radar. And, before I switch out of it, let me just look at velocities one more time. I'm going to switch back over to NextRad, but I do just want to look at the velocities. I want to look inside this one more time. That old downbursting pattern is still there. Okay, let's take a look at this. We may, take a look at this. We may, right over Louisville, we may have a new downbursting pattern trying to develop. See how quickly that red is being blown out? So the radar site's right here. Love Field, it's not at Love Field, it's in northwestern Dallas County. And you see this fast flow red, see that? Beginning to develop. And so there may be a bit of a downbursting signature even right here in the Louisville area trying to develop. Nowhere near, I mean, you can still see the old downbursting signature literally now on the eastern sides of Argyle. Nothing like that yet. But again, these are hard to catch normally, right? These are normally really hard to catch. That one's very persistent. That's not typical, right? You normally don't see that. Normally you catch these kind of in-between sweeps. But all of a sudden you see this red, right? These higher velocity bends develop and again quickly pushing. You can see the airflow pushing quickly there off to the northeast. It's not a definite for sure, but again, right in the Louisville area, not impossible. We may have a new little downbursting signature trying to happen. So the Love Field radar, the beam comes around about every 80 seconds. So just a little over a minute and we'll get a new sweep in. Looking at that, right? So again, possibly a downbursting signature trying to develop right in here as well. And again, that would be moving down towards Capel and again, right down 35E. If there were to be a downbursting signature in there, again, keep in mind, winds could easily jump up to 60, 65, maybe even a little bit higher, okay? I would almost, again, if I was going to Vegas right now, I would wager, I think here's the green. I think we're starting to see it. It's in a weird area because of where the radar is. We're looking right up in between it, but see, here's the green right there developing, right? And so because the radar's here and we're shooting right up in between it, we're not getting as good of a look as we did at that one over there. But I think it's right over Louisville. You can see it separating right there. And not that this is the end of the world, but again, if something severe was going to happen with this, it's happening right now. You see it right there. And that's another downbursting signature. So in Louisville and on the southern sides of town, again, there could easily be some 60-mile-per-hour winds. We'll just see if that becomes a little more impressive, right? But at least right now, some 50 to 60-mile-per-hour winds, not impossible. And if you can see that downbursting, I mean, literally fanning out, happening right there in real time. So again, possible 50, 60-mile-per-hour winds in Louisville, another possible downbursting signature, and again, that's going to ride down, again, eventually 35E, again, even down towards Carrollton. There's Capel, 635 extension out towards the big airport. And again, this is going to be causing issues at the big airport, right? I mean, anytime you're dealing with possible downburst, more than likely, there may even be an airport warning out. If there's not, regardless, they probably had to already suspend some flight operations, right? Downburst and planes do not work well, as we all know. Okay, let me do this. I just want to leave that up there just for one more moment to see if we can really capture that, a better presentation of that. I'm going to come back over to normal radar mode. I know for some folks, the red and green, that makes no sense, and you're wondering what's going on. So let me just go and expand out the view, and we'll lapse this. And what time is it now? We're going on 6:23, so we're going on after almost 6:30 now. We've, I think, been on now for just a little over an hour as we were tracking that through Denton County. Again, quite a bit more concerning with hail earlier up in the Denton area. Near miss, the main hail core went just to the west of Denton. Maybe some quarters now being reported earlier up in the Denton area. So again, this is it, right? So again, if you're in Dallas County, and maybe you got the alert on our mobile app, right? You're wondering what in the world is going on because the warning is all the way down into downtown Dallas specifically, right? But the actual storm, it's just crawling at maybe 30 miles per hour, again, out of Denton County. It may eventually make it into downtown Dallas, right? There's no guarantee it could even weaken before it gets there. Again, if you're over in Tarrant County, over around Fort Worth, again, everything quiet right now. And in fact, even if you're up in Collin County, everything basically quiet. You can see a few showers up in the McKinney area, right there at the 380 and 75, a few showers there, nothing major. And then we're basically watching this, right? So depending on where you are in the Metroplex, Ellis County, Johnson County, quiet, Kaufman County, Rockwall County, basically quiet. And then again, we're still watching what's well out to our northwest, right? Now, just east of Childress, broken line of supercells has really dramatically developed out there, and that's what's going to be inbound for later in the evening. So if you're just now joining us, we weren't really anticipating this. This is kind of an appetizer, so to speak, right? I mean, we had some showery activity to the north earlier. We knew about that. That basically dried up. We thought we had a couple hours of really nothing going on until the activity came in from the northwest. But we had this. It was a supercell. This is kind of what's left of it, but it continues to give us some issues with wind at this point. And again, it's now just kind of tracing right down 35E eventually out of Denton County into parts of Dallas County. We've already had one fairly significant downburst signature with it. We may have a new downburst signature. We're going to come back over to the velocity bins and take a look here. We may have a new downbursting. Yeah, we do. Look at this here. I'm going to zoom this in, and let's look at this together here. It's right in here. Again, this is not quite as pronounced as the other one, but again, you can just see the separation here, right? You can see the reds, the hotter bins going that way, and you can see the greens right here. This isn't a higher velocity presentation that we had, again, over around the Argyle area about 10 minutes ago, but there is still some gusty wind right in here, and it's in the downbursting variety. And again, I would put it right around 50 to maybe 60. It's going to be just south of Louisville. And again, you can see that little area of green moving down towards Capel. This is part of the downburst right there, you see it. And so even moving down towards Capel, again, could be some winds maybe around 50 miles per hour. Could even be 60, not impossible. Again, obviously that's going to be moving down towards the big airport. It's really going to cause some flight operation issues for them. There's the Gaylord Texan. Again, over there in Grapevine. So again, some of that wind could be moving in that direction as well. I want to center this up again because again, right now we're not getting as good of a presentation as we did earlier. Number one, that's good. That means it's not quite as high velocity, but we're literally right at the radar site and it's just shooting it in kind of a weird direction. So I think that's also part of the issue that we're having here as well. Let me go and center this up one more time here. And what I want to do, I'm going to back out. We're going to come back over to the next rad. We're not going to get as good of a view with the next rad. But from the next rad, look at that old downburst. We're still, the old downburst that's now south of Argyle, we are still seeing that one. I'm going to lapse this. Let me put this into movie mode. And give that just a second to reload up there. And this old downburst is still there, man. I tell you, there's still, even down towards Flower Mound, these are still some pretty gusty winds. Texas Motor Speedway, Flower Mound, that is still that old downbursting pattern, right? So we've been watching over here. We've been trying to catch it with the Love Field radar. The Love Field radar is basically made for this specific product, right? It can still show you normal radar, but the operators at the airport use it for situations like this, trying to depict, is there any truly a downburst happening, right? That could impact airplanes coming in or out. But we're not getting as good of a look because now that activity is moving right over the Love Field radar site. The radar is not at Love Field. It's in northwestern Dallas County, and so we can't really see it. It's kind of getting into its blind spot. So I went back to the next rad. We're still seeing that downburst with some gusty wind moving into Flower Mound. But the bigger question is, again, back over here around Louisville, where we're maybe beginning to depict something on the Love Field radar. Could we maybe still be getting some 60-mile-per-hour winds back in here as well, moving down again towards the Capel area, right? So it's not as cut and dry, obviously, as that other downbursting signature. Here's what I also want to do. I want to just come back over to normal radar mode, and I want to zoom this out. And I want to take a look out here to the northwest. This is really what we're also watching. And I just want to remind everyone, if for any reason, again, you're thinking that what we're dealing with now is the main show, it's not. This is tough out here to our northwest. This is a broken line of supercells. That is very tough. And, obviously that's got to make its way through the rolling plains. It's got to move through the Wichita Falls area. But again, for our friends out like in Young County, out in Stevens County, Jack County, Montague County, heads up. I mean, you folks are under a severe thunderstorm watch already. The rest of North Texas is not. Those are tough cells, and those have big hail. You see the black cores associated with each one of those, and those cells mean business. That will eventually, I think, morph into a complex and move deeper into North Texas as we go through the overnight here in the Metroplex, 10, 11, even midnight, potentially moving through again if they're able to hold together. All indications are now they will hold together. We have the jet stream kicking in right now, and it's really maximized overhead. I think one of the reasons why we already had to deal with this other supercell way ahead of any of this, but this is going to be some tough stuff coming in later on this evening. So you folks out to the west, stay alert to that, right? You've still probably got another hour and a half, but again, stay alert to that activity there. Again, coming out of the rolling plains and again, coming out of the big country for you folks down in Stevens County. Okay, let's center this back up. And again, let's go and take another look at what we have going on locally in the Metroplex. And again, this was not expected, right? None of the model data did anything with this. But this storm, it looks like it's trying to tick up a little bit, right? We had been dealing with mainly a wind threat after it kind of morphed out of its supercell phase, right? It was a supercell with big hail. It was a near miss in Denton, went right to the west, and then it gusted out, and it wasn't really doing much other than just producing gusty wind. But there may be a bit of a hail core. You saw the smattering of black coming back in it. And even though the Weather Service mainly issued this warning for wind, which again, we think we're seeing some type of a downbursting pattern, near the Louisville area, near the Capel area, maybe with some 60-mile-per-hour winds, maybe even down towards Carrollton. There may also be a bit of a hail core redeveloping here as well. 1-inch size hail would be quarter, right? So that would technically make it, even for hail, quote-unquote, severe. So that's going to be near Las Colinas. There would be the Toyota Music Factory right there at the 114. Again, there's Carrollton. 35E, this would be the 635 junction there, and it's basically sitting right over the 635 junction in 35E. There could be some quarter-size hail. Again, not that that's really a big deal. It's severe. We know quarter-size hail doesn't necessarily do a lot of damage, but where I'm going with this is this cell here, it may be ever so slightly trying to come back to life, right? So we still need to watch that hail threat, even though we've only been talking about wind now for the last 30 minutes. So again, quarter-size hail, I know, it's severe, but we don't get overly concerned about that, right? But say it goes from quarters and maybe jumps back up to $half, or maybe for some reason gets a little bit bigger, right? Then it's a completely different story. So we still need to watch this just because things are so dynamic this evening. We still need to watch for that hail core, again, possibly coming back up there as well. And again, you can see that smattering of black coming right there through the Carrollton area. So it looks like this storm, it's going to try and hold on. It's going to try and hold on as it moves really more so into Dallas County. The motion with it has been a little unpredictable. And, it's another situation where it's riding the Weather Service's warning. And I'm sure over there, they're probably having fits with this. Earlier, it was moving due easterly. And then the warning was going due easterly. It curved all out of nowhere down towards Denton. And then it turned almost due south. And now it's almost curving a little more southeasterly, right? So you see this, it's really going to be bumping right up along their polygon, their warning. They like for the core of the storm to be right in the middle of it, right? And it's really not. It's beginning to ride the edge. So we'll see what they have to do with that. But again, the bottom line is there could be some 60-mile-per-hour winds. And again, there may be an opportunity still of some quarter-size hail associated with that as well. I think you can almost even see a little, over around the Grapevine area, you see that little area of green. We'll need one more sweep to really verify that. But there may even be a little gust front coming out from that as well. And that was that old downburst that we caught. And again, that little green line, this is what I'm talking about. That would be, dust, bugs, birds, anything coming up from that. But that could, in all reality, this still could be still talking about that same old downburst from almost 20 minutes ago. But this little green line, that's pretty indicative of some dust, some bugs, some birds that are being stirred up from that old downburst. And when you start to see that, you could easily still have in excess of 60-mile-per-hour winds. Do you see that little green line right there? This is what I'm talking about right there. It's just from that downburst, but it's drumming up stuff, right? It's drumming up dust, again, bugs, birds, whatever it is. It's just kind of, generating that up. And again, the radar beam is picking that up. It doesn't know that it's bugs, obviously, but it's just kind of giving that little weak reflectivity region right there. And so again, if I'm in Grapevine, even if I'm down towards Colleyville, heads up, I still think that little green line right in there, you could have some 60, maybe 65-mile-per-hour winds coming in, right? So, Gaylord, Texan, Grapevine, down towards Colleyville, again, any of those areas, heads up, there's some gusty wind. There could be gusty wind in any of this, as we know, but I think we can almost say for sure we have gusty wind right there. You can see a little activity developing right on the leading edge of that, right? Right on the leading edge of that gust front. Look right there in the Grapevine area. We have some new activity developing right over the big airport. There's DFW, right? So here are the runways on each side. And again, right over the big airport, we've got a new little area developing because of that little gust front, again, coming out from this. So we have a lot of little micro things happening here as well. But again, this has just kind of been a tough storm. I mean, it's no longer necessarily quote unquote a supercell, right? But it's still there's just a lot happening with this. And again, it's moving right through the Metroplex. Look at that hail core over around Carrollton. Look at that trying to jump up again on us a little bit. Let's come back over to the hail core tracker. So again, this isn't necessarily cyclic that it's coming back up to supercell status or it's trying to regenerate or come back to life, but I mean, it's still hanging pretty tough. And I think we'll need one more sweep. I think this sweep of the hail core is not reflective of what we were just showing there with the reflectivity, because we just got that new little black core coming back up. This is still putting it around quarters, could be at quarters, but it could be a little bit bigger, right? And it's going to be right there with the 635. I mean, we know this 630, this time of day, ton of people on the 635. There's the Galleria, right? Here's 35E, 635 extension going out to Capel, just to orient you. This would be the 114 Toyota Music Factory. Even though the text comes over here, Toyota Music Factory would be right about there. Again, 35E. Here's our studios, WTTV studios. So we're right down in here. Downtown's right there. So the little hail core right in here. So this is what we need to watch as well. Again, outside of the wind potential we were just talking about, I think we've got to watch this little hail core. Again, may stay right where it is around quarters. Could maybe get a little bit bigger as well. Okay, so the bottom line is, more so Dallas County, and we know it always makes folks in other counties not so happy when we just talk about Dallas County, but it is moving into Dallas County, right? I mean, what is the motion with this? It's moving out of Denton County. It's basically moving into Dallas County, right? So let me go and zoom this out a little bit more. And again, one more time, again, if you're watching us on Roku, Apple, Amazon, Fire TV, again, we just want to continue to give you the overview, or on the mobile app, obviously for the folks just now getting off work. We just want to remind you, right, of what's going on around the Metroplex. If you're driving home, you're wondering, are you about to get into some active weather? Let me tell you, I mean, if you're in Tarrant County, basically no. Okay, if you're maybe over around the mid-cities of Tarrant County, possibly, right? But like Fort Worth, downtown Fort Worth, I mean, most of the loop, I mean, you're basically fine, right? All the activity is well off to your northeast, okay? Denton County has already had a ton of active weather moving through, but things are quieting down, right? I mean, you can see it basically tracing now out of Denton proper, away from 35W, more so over towards 35E, right? If you're over in Collin County, it's basically quiet. I mean, there's some showery activity here along the 75. Nothing major. I mean, maybe some wet roads, right? That's not really, in the grand scheme of things, a big deal. So where's the focus now, right? Where's the focus now, at least over the next 30 to 45 minutes? I think it's basically going to be right into Dallas County. Again, maybe in the mid-cities, part of Tarrant County, up towards Grapevine, right? The big airport, locations like that for sure. But again, more so, this is going to be moving into Dallas County. Again, no longer as severe as it was, but again, could we still be dealing with some 60-plus mile-per-hour winds? And we've kind of got this new little hail core trying to develop now as well. And again, that little hail core basically sitting right over the 635, right? So that could give us some problems there as well. So let's go and zoom back in. And again, Rockwall County, Kaufman County, again, you folks right now quiet as well. Parker County, Ellis County, Johnson County, also quiet. I don't want to forget about our friends out there. Okay, now there's the latest sweep, and you just saw that hail core begin to kind of wane, right? We kind of got a little bit of heightened reflectivity just over the last 5 minutes. You saw that little blip of black come up, right? It was trying to show us that maybe there was some type of a hail core trying to kind of regenerate there. I mean, it's still there, but not necessarily. We'll put that into perspective with the hail core tracker. On the back side of this, even over towards Keller, look at the Keller community. You're not even going to get a raindrop out of this. See that little green line, how it snakes all the way out to Keller? That's the outflow. Okay, so you're going to get from the north, you're going to get a northerly, maybe a northeasterly wind coming in there. You may still even get some 30 to 40 mile per hour winds from this. This storm earlier was at 50,000 feet, and it quickly came down to about 40, then 30, and now it's at 20. So it's basically lost 30,000 feet, but everything associated within that updraft had to come back down. And as that happens, you get big wind events. That's what we've had. We're still kind of maybe dealing with some hail here and there, but that's why this has been turned into mainly a wind deal, right? Is because, again, we've just lost 30,000 feet in 25 minutes of this cell, maybe over 30 minutes, right? But it's been fairly quick. But it's this little green line. So again, even Colleyville, you folks you may not get a raindrop, but that green line, that's going to be gusty, cooler, gusty, northeasterly wind, and it's gusty enough. We're getting thunder here at our studios. Things are we'll look at that, but kind of rocking and rolling here a little bit. Again, like I mentioned, we're over here on 35V, most of the activity just north of us. But again, you can see that gust front, right? So even though you may not get a raindrop in Keller or in Colleyville, you'll get that northeasterly wind. And again, it's gusty enough that it's kicking up some dust, some birds, some insects, whatever it is that we're getting a presentation on radar. So typically that would at least be 40 to 50, maybe 55 miles per hour moving in your direction, maybe without even getting a raindrop, right? So just keep that in mind. Again, even as far west as the Keller community. Again, you see that little green line, right? So we're dealing with wind, again, even outside of the storm. And again, if you get a 40 or 50 mile per hour wind gust, again, we know it's not the end of the world, but could it blow around, the trash can? Could it blow around some lawn furniture? Could it cause some issues? Yeah, absolutely. Now, as we get inside the warning polygon, could we still maybe have some 60 mile per hour winds? And the answer to that is yes. We already had one fairly significant downbursting signature, and you start talking about 60 mile per hour winds, well, it's a different deal, right? That's severe. It can cause some real damage. You get over 60, and you can really get some damage. Okay, so let's come back over to velocity. And again, we'll look inside of this again. And we may come back over to the Love Field radar. Most of this is sitting still right over the Love Field radar. Again, the radar is not actually at Love Field. It's in northwestern Dallas County. So I know that sounds a little confusing. But the Love Field radar, which is made specifically to look at this product here, these velocity bins, show us the wind direction. It sits right about here, right? And so all this is moving on top of it. So we can't necessarily use the Love Field radar right this second. It's not a real accurate presentation. So I'm back with the NexRad. The NexRad is south of Fort Worth. The NexRad is pretty good at this, but when you're kind of in this mode, the NexRad likes to look for mesocyclones, for things that are spinning that we typically deal with in the spring, right? So, but it can still do this job okay as well. And in fact, we're still seeing it. You still see that area of green. That is still, again, that initial downburst we were talking about. Let me go and center this back up. And this is some of that, again, gusty wind. You may not even get a raindrop over there, but you could still get some gusty wind. And it's showing up even from the NexRad. It's this area right here. And there's another beam coming around, and there's the beam right there coming around. But this is the gusty wind I was talking about, right? So like if you're over in Keller, again, you're down in Colleyville, you may not get a raindrop, but now we're actually seeing, there's that little green line, and we're getting some wind gust associated with that. I'm going to sample, and I hate to keep walking on and off the screen, but this is just kind of so dynamic here that we need to kind of keep you up to date with what's going on. It's not always accurate to sample this from this distance. But again, I mean, this is just looking at some of these, what we call velocity bins here. I mean, what are they saying? What are they suggesting? I mean, the NexRad is trying to tell us there could be some 45 to maybe 58 mile per hour winds in this line. And again, the rain is like up in here. So again, some locations like Colleyville, you may not get a raindrop. Could you get a 51? Could you maybe get a 58 mile per hour wind gust? I'd say, yeah, the fact that we were getting the presentation of even that little gust front showing up with dust, with bugs and birds or whatever it is, I mean, it typically leads you to believe you're getting in excess of 50-mile-per-hour gust. So when I see a 58 there, do I think, is that probably pretty accurate? I think I would, in this situation, I would say, yeah. And again, as we come back over to, again, just the normal radar mode within that area where we had that velocity bin, that little velocity piece of data, that's just raw data, right? Raw, nothing, the computer doesn't do anything with that. It's just raw data. It fits perfectly with that little green line. And again, that little green line, this is not rain. Again, that's dust, bugs, birds, whatever else it could be. And so Colleyville, you know, that's a heads up for you, right? You're in the warning, so to speak. But if you're just looking at radar, you're thinking, well, the storm is well off to my northeast. But you may actually still get a severe wind gust in Colleyville, again, without getting a drop of rain. So I think it's just worth mentioning over and over. Similar story even out towards Keller. You see that little extend even out towards Keller. Grapevine, again, the big airport, gusty wind moving in there as well. And again, what we're sampling here could put it, again, right up around, again, a 58-mile-per-hour gust. I want to do this. I want to look at our Reunion Tower cam. Let me just cue this up too. And this is looking off. This is looking off to the northwest. And so, it looks like you're looking north into downtown Dallas, but there is a bit of a northwesterly component. So in other words, this would more so be looking like towards the 635 and the 35E junction, right? In fact, if you look there on your far left-hand side of the screen, that's 35E, the traffic moving right there, okay? So not a real good depiction yet. You look at that, it doesn't really tell you anything, right? So we'll come back to this and look at this again. But again, if this continues to kind of trace, if you will, if it traces down to the southeast, it's going to be moving right into, basically right into camera center. Because again, like I mentioned, we're just kind of tilted just slightly looking there off to the northwest. But again, that shot right now, obviously not really telling much of a story whatsoever. So again, we'll come back to that. Let's come back over to radar. And we'll zoom this out one more time. I just want to center this up. And I want to zoom this all the way out. And again, the only reason why, if I say this a couple times, bear with me. Again, we've got, Roku, Apple, Amazon, Fire TV. We may have people watching on the mobile app. They're getting home from work. They're like, what's going on? It's been, dry and 100 for 3 months. What's happening? Really what's happening is we have what we were anticipating developing out to our northwest, a broken line of supercells. That's inbound. That's tough weather out there, okay? It still has to make it through Wichita Falls, but especially for our western counties, Montague, Jack, Young, even down through Stevens County, heads up. Over the next couple of hours, you're first up on that. That's going to be moving in your direction. Supercell shapes, all of them, again, moving east, okay? That's what we were anticipating. But what also happened, as we went through the late afternoon and early evening, we had a supercell shape develop right in the Metroplex. Okay, it's weakening. It's still severe. It's no longer a supercell, but now it's just kind of moving through the heart of the Metroplex. It was giving us problems with big hail initially up in Denton County, as I zoom this back in. But now it's more so giving us problems with wind. Because the storm went up, literally vertically up very quickly, up in fact over 50,000 feet. Well, what's the old saying? What goes up must come down. And so the storm has slowly been coming down from 50,000 feet. It's now about 20,000 feet and still dropping. So all those updrafts, all that vertical air that was going up, right? When you see the cloud, that's also air motion as well. That begins to come down. And so as it comes down, that's when you start getting into the gusty wind factor with these cells. No longer a supercell. You look at that. If you've lived in North Texas, that's not a supercell. It doesn't even honestly at this point even look that impressive on radar anymore, but it's the fact it went up so high that it's still coming down, that it's still giving us problems with wind. We had a big downburst in far southern portions of Denton County. You can still see, and we've been talking about that little outflow boundary moving through northeastern portions of Tarrant County. Again, the storm's still gusting down, right? Down bursting, down drafts, down bursting. And again, we're seeing the signature there. We maybe had a bit of a downburst kind of on this more easterly flank of the cell as it was up around the Louisville area. But what we don't know is, again, could that maybe happen again as it's moving into Dallas County, right? Because that's kind of the stronger part of the storm. You're never guaranteed a downburst. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. But It's happened once, so we need to keep watching for it. So I'm going to come back over to the left field radar. I think we've got enough separation now that we can look inside of this. Earlier, this was kind of sitting right over the left field radar. We didn't get a very good look at this. I'm switching from the NexRad to the left field radar because this specific, right, these aerodome radars are made to look for wind and for downbursts, anything that could impact a plane as it's on final approach into the airport, right? Even on clear air days, right? You can have a really hot day and still have issues with some downbursts and some other things, right? So as we look at this, I mean, right now, actually take a look at this. Let's center this up with where exactly the radar is, because you're getting, here's Carrollton, and again, you're beginning to see this kind of fanning out. But I need to make sure we're placing this up with exactly where the radar is, right? Because if you're sitting right over the cone of the radar, you're still going to get that same presentation. And in fact, no, we're not. This is another downburst. Here's the cone of silence. This is where the radar is, right here. Again, it's not at left field. Again, we keep saying the left field radar. It's not at left field. It's literally right there. But up here in Carrollton, here we go. This is another down. Look at that. See, it's like a little, see how that just, and you can almost see the motion. It looks like a water hose, how it's splattering green one way and red the other. This is a downburst happening right over Carrollton right now. So we caught another one in real time. You see that? And the little velocity bends, I mean, it's just like it's splatter, because literally that's wind coming down and it's just hitting the surface of the earth, right? High velocity wind coming straight down and it just fans out. And it just fans out. So, I mean, this is twice. You catch these from time to time. This is not like it's, no one's ever seen these before. But sometimes they're a little hard to catch. And sometimes they'll happen in between radar sweeps. And you maybe catch the end of it, right? These airport radars like left field, it's really good because you get a 70-second beam, right? So we're sampling this every 70 seconds. So in real time, we're seeing this, right? In 5 minutes, this may be completely gone. But there it is. So in Carrollton, is it safe to say right now, is there maybe some 60-mile-per-hour winds? Could there be 65? Could there maybe even be 70-mile-per-hour winds? Not impossible. This is not the most accurate way to do it, but let's just sample this. Sometimes this is really good and sometimes it's not that great. Let me just run this back through, and I want to sample this. And bear with me while I'm manually stair-stepping it. I'm trying to get to some of the hottest bends here. There's a 45, there's a 38. I'm going to clear this off. I'm going to move this just a little more, and there's some brighter. There's a 58. Let's look at away. We're not necessarily seeing much on the away, but again, I mean, there's maybe a 58. That's not always the most accurate. You'll have some people, you'll use this, and you'll have some people who, again, know about operating radar, and they'll say, that ain't it. But this at least gives us a range, right? Could we maybe have some 58-mile-per-hour winds? That's what we were maybe thinking, right? I mean, the radar is suggesting that at least, okay? So in the Carrollton area, I mean, long story for a simple point, in the Carrollton area, we may currently have some 58-mile-per-hour, maybe even some 60-mile-per-hour winds, and a downburst literally happening right now. Now, the other piece of that, with that part of the cell that we've kind of been waiting to downburst, it's the one that's kind of held itself together. Does that mean the rest of the storm continues to weaken now? Will it continue to wane now that it's finally downburst? I mean, we'll see if that happens, right? The other piece did, and now we're having this one. It's happening right now. So again, even south of Carrollton, right, like even down towards 635, there's 35E junction. Some of the gusty wind, just kind of follow my finger, follow it down. This would be the 114 Toyota Music Factory right there. And again, even on the backside of this, right? So here would be the tollway. There's the shops at Willow Bend, getting up into parts of Collin County. Could even be some gusty wind up there as well, and potentially even over towards the Capel area. So again, a lot going on with this cell. Again, it just continues to give us fits here, as it has, again, over the last hour. Let me look at the weather wire. Let me just see what the Weather Service is talking about over there in Fort Worth quickly, see if they have any new reports coming in. And again, they're saying, yeah, similar story, some gusty wind. They think 60 plus could be possible. We would agree with that. Not really seeing much else. Again, just looking to see if there's any additional reports coming in. Let me just see real quick here. Could be some quarters, maybe, over in Valley Ranch. I mean, we don't necessarily see the data to support that, but there is a report off the weather wire over around Irving, over in Valley Ranch, of maybe some quarters. Not impossible. Some P's in Louisville, pea-size hail, that sounds about right. And again, bear with me, I'm just quickly scrolling through this. There's a bunch of other stuff in here, just trying to get through the reports actually. And that's about it. Those are really the only reports, really out of all this. Kind of surprising that, again, those are the only reports coming in right now. So again, maybe some quarters over in Valley Ranch, maybe not, just based off the data. And then again, right now, just in real time, I mean, what we're literally finding here, again, is our downbursting signature, number 2, that again is now happening right over the Carrollton area. Right? So again, you just kind of follow the green down, right? It's going to be moving down towards the 114. Again, we're talking about, Las Colinas area, North Irving, more so down towards Irving. That would be the 183, the Irving Mall, things like that are down there. This would be 35E. Again, keep in mind, this is not, 80, 90. This is not crazy wind. But again, 60 mile per hour wind, number 1, is severe. And again, can 60 mile per hour wind do damage? The answer is yeah. That's why it's obviously warned on, right? 60 mile per hour is kind of the threshold of when you begin to potentially see damage. We see that all the time here in North Texas. You get to 65, you get to 70, and then you really start, more than likely seeing some damage. 60 is kind of at the cusp. And right now the radar data is kind of showing us that we could be, again, there right around 60. But again, even for the folks, on 635, not only is there some rain moving in, which we all know 635, right? And rain doesn't bode well. Now add some 60 mile per hour winds, right? Oof, that doesn't sound good at all. And so again, keep in mind, that's also going to be moving over towards the big airport. So again, if you are catching a flight, you're picking anyone up over at the big airport, I mean, the bottom line, come on, check ahead for sure. Let me come back over to normal radar mode. If you're deeper into Dallas County, let me go and lapse this because, you can see this is moving through Northwest Highway, Preston Hollow, down through University Park. And this is crawling down towards downtown Dallas. We'll check that Reunion Tower cam again. This is moving quickly. In fact, it's moving. We heard thunder here earlier. We've got rain now based off of radar at our studios. We're right there off of the Stemmons, 35E. You can see right there, WTTV studio. We're just north of downtown. There's Oak Lawn. There's University Park, Preston Hollow. This would be Northwest Highway here. And again, White Rock Lake back over in here. Fair Park. Downtown Dallas, there's the zoo just south of downtown. But again, this has kind of picked up a little bit of speed, right? It's moving fairly quickly now through parts of Dallas County. I want to come back over to our Reunion Tower cam. And again, we'll take another look at this. And again, just kind of take a look at the inside of this. We'll punch that up again. Give us just 1 second here. And again, we should be able to at least see this activity moving on in. Let's go take a look at this here. And you can still kind of see it off in the distance, right? This has not been a great shot to see this. This is coming in from the northwest. And again, this shot, even though it's looking north from Reunion Tower into downtown, it's tilted slightly northwest. And so again, you can kind of see the rain curtains, right? I mean, it's not overly dramatic. You can't really necessarily make it out. But again, you can just kind of see kind of that kind of midnight blue haze in the background. And of course, obviously that's rain, right? There's rain curtains in the background. I mean, not seeing a lot of lightning, not seeing really much in the way of craziness happening here. But again, we'll be able to get another look even as that moves directly in to downtown as well. So the bottom line is, even if you're, again, out and about this evening in downtown Dallas, again, heads up, right? You've got rain moving in. Again, you're talking about the uptown area, any locations, around downtown. Again, heads up as this moves on in. I just want to widen out the view here. And I'll go and pause this animation as well. We'll take this in just a little bit tighter, right? And so again, kind of the leading edge of some of the raindrops, at least, now moving into downtown. Again, this would be 75 Central. There's Highland Park. The SMU campus would be just a little bit further to the north. North Park Mall, I don't even know if you can see that on your screen, kind of just above the banner. But again, raining basically from downtown, 75 Central, again, all the way up through a good part of downtown Dallas. There's the tollway, again, also looking quite wet. White Rock Lake over in here, looking wet. Old East Dallas would be wet. Again, Deep Ellum would be wet. This is moving down towards Fair Park. This would be 30. There's Kessler Park. Again, activity moving down towards Kessler Park, Design District. Again, Oak Lawn, I think we've already mentioned. And again, anywhere along that Stemmons corridor, again, also fairly wet as well. We'll look at the Hellcore tracker. I just saw that pop up there, that little smattering of black. Again, we've dealt at times with the Hellcore with this. Earlier, when it was in Denton County, of course, that's what the warning was for, large hail. Since then, we haven't had much in the way of hail concerns with this. I want to come back over to the next rad. just so we can use our Hellcore product. I'm going to zoom this out. With the left field radar, we only get a small sweep, so when I switch back over, you're going to see a little bit more here anyway. And then I want to come over to the Hellcore tracker, and we'll zoom this back in. I mean, we've got two pretty minimal Hellcores here, right? I mean, maybe back over towards the 114. There could maybe still be some quarters over there. You know, that is, you know, in all reality, that is over in Valley Ranch. We did get that report of quarters. That would actually match up with this, right? I mean, it's not necessarily there now, but over in Valley Ranch, could there have been some quarters? Yeah, probably. We're seeing that on the data. You know, could there maybe be some nickels? You know, again, kind of down on this kind of more easterly quadrant of the activity we were talking about. I mean, not impossible, right? But again, as far as the big hail goes, as far as all the concerns we had up in Denton County, none of that's going on now whatsoever, right? It's mainly just a wind threat. And the other piece of that, it's a heavy rain threat, a very heavy rain threat as well. In fact, we need to do this. I want to come back over to normal mode quickly, but then I also want to look at, just for the heck of it, anytime we have activity moving through the Metroplex, I want to take a look here at, we'll look at rainfall rates. And I was just trying to think of which one I wanted to do for sure. We'll do rainfall rates and give this just 1 second. I didn't have this queued, but this will populate it. This isn't even a NextRad product. It's a digital product from the Weather Service. Again, keep in mind, this is not how much rain you're going to get in your rain gauge because this activity is moving. But again, some of our rainfall rates could easily be 3 to 4. I'll sample this where you're seeing the black, 3 to 4 inches per hour. So in other words, if this activity stalled, that's the amount of rain coming down. That can easily cause some real concerns on the roadways. Let me go and resample this here and take a look at this. I'm going to turn this off. I mean, look at these rainfall rates. I mean, we're getting some nearly 4-inch rainfall possibilities, right? Again, this is not what you're going to get in your rain gauge. It's moving, but when you think of the volume of water coming down, this is a high volume of water, right? And it's moving right into downtown Dallas and the surrounding areas, right? We're talking about Uptown, you know, we're talking about Oak Lawn, we're talking about the Medical District, you know, any of those areas, even back over through the Design District. You know, folks are maybe heading out for dinner, right? You know, and also parts of 75 Central and the Tollway. You know, not that that's going to cause like an immediate flash flooding concern, but will there be ponding on the roadways? You know, roadways that kind of have a low-lying spot to them. Could there be pooling of water and cause some real traffic issues? We know in Dallas that's always a huge problem, right? In the city of Dallas. And again, we've got a high volume of water moving in. Okay, let's go and take that Reunion Tower cam shot again. Take a look at that now. So now we've got the rain. Now we can actually see it. It's not necessarily a gray out, right? We know when we get heavy snow, it's a white out. Whenever you get heavy rain, it's a gray out. And we've had it grayed out where you couldn't even see, you know, downtown. But that's not the case right now. It's heavy rain for sure. But again, you know, if you're trying to step out this evening, again, we're talking about Uptown, we're talking about downtown, we're talking about Oak Lawn, you know, any of those areas, right? You know, heads up. This will be in and out. I mean, this is not going to be an all-evening deal. We have an opportunity of more storms later on this evening. But again, if you have Tuesday evening plans, let this blow on through. And then once this eases up, again, just keep in mind, you know, ponding on the roadways and, again, wet roadways, obviously, around immediate downtown Dallas. But again, this is not going to be an all-evening deal. Again, we will have more coming in a little bit later on in the evening as well. So keep that in mind. But again, you know, general thunderstorm activity here. It is quote unquote severe. We're not necessarily seeing the big wind with this now that we were earlier. And I think the overall hail concern has begun to minimize as well. Just looking for anything else coming in here from the weather wire. Okay, well, Weather Service still monitoring this. You know, they may not necessarily reissue a warning on this. And that would make sense, right? I mean, we're not going to speak for them. They can make that decision. But as they're kind of analyzing this in real time, they may or may not necessarily re-warn on this, right? So we have the warning until 7:15, right? So that's for about another 13 minutes. It's 7:02 right now. But this is actually really beginning to speed up. It was moving relatively slow. And we'll come back over to radar. It was just kind of creeping out of Denton County. And all of a sudden, I mean, it just hit the accelerator. It got into Dallas County. And I guess it's driving like how we drive, right, in Dallas County. I mean, it's sped up. I mean, look how fast it's moving now when it was just creeping out of Denton County. So again, other locations, I mean, even outside of this warning, right, it's bumping up against the warning. So what's the Weather Service doing right now? they're having to decide, are they going to extend that warning? I don't think they are. I don't really see a severe component to this left. We're still watching maybe that little hail core there, right? It was still only at Nichols. Could it maybe flare back up in the next few minutes? We'll watch that. But outside of that, I think most of the downbursting wind that we were picking up on, I think that's minimized. There could still be some 40 to 50 mile per hour winds with this. Heavy rain, vivid lightning. Look at all the lightning associated with this. So we're getting very vivid lightning. Please keep that in mind. But again, compared to this, crazy supercell that we had up in Denton County, beefy supercell, really looked very concerning for about 20 minutes. We're nowhere near that now, right? In fact, we almost have two separate cells. They've kind of almost split here, but it really doesn't look like either one of those are necessarily at severe levels right this very second. So even though that southerly cell is now bumping up against the warning, I would not necessarily anticipate the Weather Service extending the warning. We'll see what they do. I'm just going to extend this a little bit further down to the south because I want to talk about southern Dallas County. And we'll zoom this in only for other folks, right? This is moving at almost 40 miles per hour now. So it's moving at a pretty good clip, right? So again, over around Cockrell Hill, all the Amazon warehouses, you see Amazon there, distribution centers, Oak Cliff, there's the zoo, Duncanville, here's Hutchins, our friends down in Lancaster, there's DeSoto, there's Cedar Hill down to 67, here's Balch Springs, so this will be curving down into Interstate 20. Heads up, again, right now as it gets down to you folks, it may not necessarily still be severe, but again, you're seeing all the lightning already ahead of the storm. We talk about this all the time. Lightning can normally reach out 5, 10 plus miles. We're seeing that specifically on this. The lightning is really leading out well ahead of the actual rain, the actual precipitation, right? So if you're down in Hutchins, you're already hearing this. You're probably already seeing lightning as well, right? But again, it's moving down in your direction. And again, it's moving down, again, fairly quickly. Like I mentioned, moving at, again, almost 40 miles per hour. Okay, so let me go and back this out. And again, we just want to make sure we're covering everybody here. Again, the good news is this is nowhere near what we were dealing with earlier. And again, the warning on this may not even necessarily be extended. I just want to give you one more shot there of downtown. Again, right, the rain was in and out fairly quickly. It looks like we'll look at radar again, there's one more little piece may move through downtown Dallas specifically as we go over the next 30 minutes or so. But again, if you're trying to make Tuesday evening plans, definitely rain now. We should still have a bit of a break by mid to late evening, and then we still have the activity coming in from the west. And that could be a little more variable, what's coming in from the west, okay, a little tougher. We'll talk more about that coming up. But this is what's happening in downtown Dallas right now. Again, obviously, even parts of uptown, Oak Lawn, again, whatever area you live in, obviously, even the medical district. Again, that's what it looks like basically right now. Okay, so it's raining. It's not crazy rain. In fact, the bulk of the heavier rain is now down to the south of downtown specifically. But we may still, you see that activity up around Carrollton. That may also drain down into parts of downtown Dallas as well. So again, this was one supercell earlier. Basically, these cells have now split. One supercell splitting cells now. Again, heavy rain has moved through downtown. There's one more that'll probably drain through. And again, there's still that little hell core, with that back cell. And again, we did get the report of quarters over in Valley Ranch. And looking at the hell core, we'll look at the hell core tracker again coming up. It did support that. So there were more than likely possibly still some quarters over there. We still have that outflow boundary moving through eastern Tarrant County. You see that little green line, even moving through the mid-cities, moving down towards Arlington right there along Interstate 30. You may still get a northerly wind gusting around 30, not get a raindrop, but get a little rain-cooled air moving in. And this is what I'm talking about. Let me go and zoom this in. So eastern Tarrant County, you're not getting any precipitation, right? But if you're over on like the North Loop, right, like over around North Richland Hills, again, really back through the mid-cities, right? There's Euless, Bedford, Colleyville, this little green line. Outflow from this cell, and again, it could easily still be some 30 or 40 mile per hour winds. It's gusty enough that little green line, it's dust, it's bugs, it's birds, whatever it is, it's gusty enough that it's kind of stirring that up. And the radar's picking up on that, right? So you folks aren't getting a raindrop, but you're still getting some gusty wind over there and some rain-cooled air as well, right? So that's eastern Tarrant County. In fact, it could even make it as far south as downtown Fort Worth. But basically right now it's right there along the 183. And again, moving over towards the North Loop right there at NRH. Okay, let's come back over to where the precip is. And we just had a pretty loud clap of thunder here at our studios. And there's our studios right there along the stem. As you see, WTTV studios. So the main precip is just to our south. But again, we kind of have the secondary push coming in. I want to look at the secondary push, the cell that kind of split off. And I want to look at the hail core tracker again, only for the fact that, again, that was where we still had a minimal hail core. Again, we had the report of quarters over in Valley Ranch, over in Irving. And, you know, the data suggested that. I mean, it's at 0.88, right? Quarters would be 1 inch. And 1 inch is minimal severe hail, right? In fact, it's almost kind of variable. Once the Weather Service sees 1 inch, they kind of make that determination. Is it really at quarters or not? Right now, the data here showing it's below quarters, okay? So as far as the severe potential goes, the hail severe potential is below the threshold they would use, right? For a severe storm, 1 inch hail or winds 58 to 60, right? 58 to 60 mile per hour gust possible. That's the other threshold or above that they use, okay? So maybe a small hail core still right over, now it's right around the 114. It's just north there, Toyota Music Factory. Maybe some nickels. You just saw an update there. It's basically now on the eastern sides of the 114. Okay, that's not really a big deal. The leading edge of the activity, which is now pushing down towards Interstate 20, curving around over towards the LBJ, similar story, right? Maybe some nickels there as well. So as far as hail goes, we're just not at that severe criteria. Let's look at the velocities one more time, and I'm going to loop this. There's one more pocket of some gusty wind that I think we're picking up on here. It's that back cell, and it's the one that continues to put out that little outflow boundary. But again, I mean, we talked about this earlier as it was initially moving through, but now this is the back side of it. And again, you kind of see how this is kind of separating, right? You kind of see this higher velocity or kind of brighter shade of green. I know that sounds elementary, but that's what you're reading here as colors, right? And see how this is kind of splitting. There may be a little bit of a downbursting signature here. And there could maybe around the Capel area, maybe be some 50 to maybe 60 mile per hour winds on that back cell. Okay, outside of that, we're not seeing anything near 60 anymore. Okay, so as we're looking for maybe is anything still severe, maybe right in here, but there's a bit of a question mark on that. But again, the brighter greens maybe moving down into Las Colinas, right, the northern sides of Irving, and then back over towards the big airport, still giving them big problems at the big airport. Okay, so maybe some gusty wind there. This would be the 635 extension, again heading out to Capel. Okay, so if there was anything still severe and anything that we're looking at, it would essentially be right there, and it would be a wind concern. As we zoom this back out, again, you can see the other activity that's now pushing down towards Interstate 20, right? There's no wind concern with that whatsoever. The only area that we're getting a defined velocity signature of anything, again, is basically now on that back cell, as the storm split, the back cell, that again is up around the Capel area. So the Weather Service, obviously, they're doing their due diligence on this as well. Does this justify another warning to be reissued? Probably not. I mean, it's up to them. But again, would be at 60. And we can sample some of this. In fact, let's quickly sample some of this. And again, just kind of see what the NEXRAD is thinking in this situation. Let me just pause this. And we'll sample, again, just some of these brighter velocity bends. I mean, the NEXRAD is basically trying to tell us, you know, some 26 to 34. That's not always the most accurate, and we get that before we get emails. That's not always the most accurate, but this is raw data coming in from the NEXRAD. And I mean, that's basically where it's putting it at, right? So it's not necessarily putting it at that severe level. Again, just looking for anything else here on the wire. So basically 4 more minutes of the warning, but essentially everything is almost moved out of the warning. Let's come back over to normal radar mode. And I mean, it just doesn't look that severe anymore. This is what is very concerning, folks, and we want to be real clear about this. This was kind of an appetizer. That was not necessarily anticipated. We've got some extremely severe weather just off to our northwest that's coming in. And again, we're looking at this. I'm shooting this from the Fort Worth, from the radar site in Burleson, south of Fort Worth, all the way out past Wichita Falls, out towards Vernon, and you see those storms. Right? I mean, we're looking at that from a distance. I could really switch over to the national composite to look at that better. But even shooting it from south of Fort Worth, from the Fort Worth NEXRAD, look at these supercells stacked up here. Broken line of supercells. That's what's inbound, again, for later on this evening. More than likely, that will merge into a complex, okay? But that's still between 10 p.m. and midnight, appears to be on schedule to be moving into the Metroplex, more than likely at that point as a complex, okay? But again, for our friends out here to the west, Stevens County, Young County, again, Jack County, Montague County, right? It's going to be to you first, and you're probably about an hour and a half away, okay? Hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, okay? But again, this could be, especially as it moves in to our far western counties, that could still be a broken line of supercells, okay, before it turns into more of a complex, okay? That could really be some tough, severe weather for you folks out there, okay? So we just want to be real clear about that. We don't want folks to be confused that, we had the cell, move through the Metroplex and that was kind of it and it's one and done and now we can go on, because that's definitely not the case, right? That wasn't even anticipated. Again, this was kind of an appetizer, so to speak, right? This activity out here to the northwest is what we're really watching. We'll see what they do with this warning. If they go ahead and drop it, we're good for now. But again, Montague, Jack, Young, Stevens County, you folks are under a severe thunderstorm watch already. But again, the reason why, it's because of what's looming right there to your northwest, okay? That's serious weather. And again, the opportunity of very large hail with that is possible. And we're still getting quite a bit of thunder here at our studios. Things are really rocking and rolling. I think we even took a little power hit here too. But again, one more time, just for our friends out there to the west, stay alert to that. We'll be here with you. We'll be back on. I mean, we're not going anywhere now anyway, but even if there is a lull for an hour or so, again, we will be back on with you when that activity moves in, okay? And we'll track that. Like I mentioned, it will eventually, more than likely, hopefully, by then a complex moving into towards the Metroplex, again, 10 p.m., midnight, maybe even a little bit after, and no longer as a broken line of supercells. But initially, we'll be arriving as a broken line of supercells. That came off the dry line. And sometimes when stuff comes off the dry line after dark, it wanes. We've got the jet stream tonight. The jet stream is maximized, it's high velocity, and it's going to sustain that activity out there, again, as it does move in, okay? So still quite a bit of weather to go. In fact, just real quick, let me show you the model. Let me just do this while we're talking about this, just to make sure everyone is kind of on the same page here. Let me just pull up the model quickly here, and we'll take a look at it. And let me grab my clicker here too. I'm going to just pause this. Okay, so, and this is basically about where we are now, right? We knew about, this was the issue we ran into. We knew about the showery activity that had basically skirted the Red River, right, as we went through the day, right? That's really what we were anticipating. That was going to dry up. You can see everything is quiet, but you can see in the corner of your screen, there's that activity looming to the northwest. What did the model not do? Well, it missed a supercell that literally moved through the Metroplex over the last hour and a half, right? So that was kind of the unpredictable part of this, okay? So let me roll this back into motion basically from right now, okay? So here comes the activity coming in from the northwest. There's 9:30. You can see it doesn't really look like a broken line of supercells by that point. It looks more like a complex. And then you can see from about 10 p.m. through about midnight, it rolls into the Metroplex, right? But the devil's in the details because we still have a broken line of supercells out there right now. I would still anticipate a complex moving into the Metroplex, but there's still a few details, I think, to sort out. There's still 12:30 in the morning activity moving through, and then that complex, as we go through the overnight, rolls east. By sunrise tomorrow morning, we're not done. Here comes one more complex out of Oklahoma, and even though it's keeping it northeast, it's not impossible that it's back built even into the Metroplex for the morning commute as well. So again, the next 8 to 10 hours, I mean, we've just got a lot happening. And again, we're going to be tracking all of it. Again, any of it could be, again, severe. Okay, so the good news, let me take a look at this here. The good news is the Weather Service, they're going to expire that warning. Okay, so the warning for Dallas County no longer in effect. Now, we still have a thunderstorm, and we're going to take a look at this. We still have a thunderstorm in Dallas County, and we'll continue to watch this with you over the next few minutes. But again, the good news is right now this is no longer severe. Okay, let me go and lapse this. And again, there's the yellow box. We call that a polygon. The polygon is dropping off, right? But there's still some heavy rain here. And again, there could still be some 50-mile-per-hour winds, right? So from Oak Cliff, moving towards South Oak Cliff. And again, our studios, things are, I mean, this, even though there's a lot of lightning showing up here, when this moved through, and again, our studios are about right there on the north of downtown, we didn't really hear much thunder. This secondary piece that's moving through, I mean, things are rocking and rolling here. I mean, there's a ton of thunder with that that's moving through right now. But again, the radar here picking up still on quite a bit of lightning now ahead of that activity there. But again, if you're down towards the Wilmer-Hutchins area, even back over through Seagoville, Again, heads up, right? That kind of that lead cell now, since these have split into two different cells, it's moving in your direction, right? So there would be the 175 south of Balch Springs, right at the 80, or maybe down towards Interstate 20. Okay, so we're talking about South Mesquite down through Balch Springs, eventually down towards Hutchins, and then eventually down towards Wilmer. Again, our friends down in Lancaster over through DeSoto. Again, heads up, right? Activity moving in your direction. Oak Cliff proper. Again, activity moving through. You can also see out South Oak Cliff plotted there as well. Heavy activity moving through your direction. Again, no longer severe. And again, also right there along 35E, you can see from the zoo all the way down to South Oak Cliff. You know, down the 67, I mean, talking about Duncanville and even back over through Cedar Hill, I mean, it's going to be razor close, right? I mean, so here's the 67. Oak Cliff rain, yes. Duncanville, more than likely some rain. You get down towards Cedar Hill, down to 67, maybe, maybe not, right? That could miss you. Again, there's still a little bit more to the north. But again, basically right now from Oak Cliff, South Oak Cliff, eventually DeSoto, Lancaster, Hutchins, eventually Wilmer, right there along 45, and then again back over towards the 175, out towards Seagoville and Balch Springs, right there at the LBJ curve up into Mesquite. So at least over kind of like the next 20 minutes, those are the areas. Again, this is no longer severe, but there's still heavy rain, there's still vivid lightning, and let's do one more hail check with this, again, just to make sure there's no hail core trying to remanifest here. This had been flirting with trying to kind of bring back a hail core, but it never really materialized. Let's take a look at the hail core tracker. And nada, right? So here, no. But up to the north, we better look up here to the north, right? Maybe some dimes. But what do we have here? What do we have here? Right along the Stemmons. So this is south of 635. In fact, right near our studios. It's basically at Northwest. There's 12. That's Northwest Highway. Our studios are south of Northwest Highway, but I'm just saying right there along the Stemmons. Let me go and sample this. I mean, there's a bit of a hail core trying to redevelop here, right? I mean, you can kind of make that judgment. It's right around 1 to maybe 1.25. Okay, so there's the new sweep, and now it's not as much, right? But again, there may have been an opportunity, at least for a brief period of time, for maybe that cell pulsing back up to quarters. Now it's more than likely at pennies. I just want to quickly look at the velocities again. Again, only for the fact these have been windy as they've been weakening, just to make sure there's no additional downbursting signatures here. And again, there's not, right? I mean, we're not seeing that. So, I mean, we're basically now more than less dealing with kind of a general Texas thunderstorm, right? But again, you can see just that heightened reflectivity just for a brief period of time. And that's what you have to do with these things, right? Sometimes they'll begin to kind of perk back up. You know, you get a sweep of reflectivity that looks like that with that little hail core coming back, then it goes away, but then it comes right back. And it's kind of back at that severe level. So again, you're seeing that smattering of black down in it. So we really want to watch that carefully, obviously, as it's moving through Dallas County. Right now, the Weather Service, not severe warning. They allowed the warning to expire, but I mean, there may be just a touch, right, of intensification with that. And again, we want to keep our eye on that, okay? So again, it's drifting south of 635, Northwest Highway, Tollway, Stemmons, and again, all the way down towards downtown, right? So this will be 75 Central North. Okay, so but again, that little smattering of black will definitely get your attention. So let's just keep our eye on it here for the next few minutes. Again, just to make sure nothing pops back up with this. And again, it's loud. Like I said, I mean, the first cell moved through. I mean, we maybe heard a little bit of thunder, but I mean, our studio, I mean, it is rocking and rolling. I mean, there's quite a bit of thunder. Weather Service, they're going to issue a flood advisory more than likely here. I want to look at, for Dallas County, and a flood advisory, it's not a flash flood warning and it's not a flood warning. It's more of kind of like an urban street flooding alert, okay? It's to let you know that more than likely there's ponding on the roadways and there's some localized street flooding. Here's what I want to do. Let me come over to 1 hour rainfall. And I didn't have this queued up, so let's hope that the next rad wants to work with me here. This is just over the last hour, and I'm actually going to take this a step further, and let's see if it wants to continue to work with me, but I'm going to put this in a Storm Total Digital, give it 1 second here, and I'm going to come over to Dual Pol, and this is what I want to use. Okay, so even though it says 1 hour, this is Storm Total. Most of this has fallen within the last hour, but say it was 1 hour and 30 minutes, I just want to capture all of it. So let me just sample this. And again, downtown about, 3/10. Parkland Health, that would be the medical district, about a half an inch. You get over into parts of North Irving, you're about out of a quarter. Where really we've had the heaviest rain is really the far northwestern portions of Dallas, like up towards Northwest Highway. I mean, and again, this is just over the last hour, maybe hour and a half, about an inch. You get over here towards the 635 extension out towards Capel. I mean, you've had over an inch and a half. And again, even 35E. I mean, talking about kind of the northern sectors there of Carrollton, right? So there is a flood advisory coming out, meaning, again, there could be some localized street flooding. There's more rain on the way, obviously. But again, really, it's that northwestern portion of Dallas County that's really had, quite a bit of rain, right? It's had quite a bit of rain in, again, a very short amount of time. Let me just clear this off. And here it is. I think they're just now issuing it right now. And again, this will be a flood advisory. This will be for Dallas County, obviously, specifically. And again, this will be until 8:45. And again, just to clarify one more time, again, flood advisory, it's totally different than a flash flood warning or even a flood warning. This mainly is for urban areas when, again, they've just had a little too much rain, right? And the main concern is street flooding or, low-lying areas that can be subject to flood. There are areas where it only takes a little rain, right? And you actually run into some real flooding issues. And so, those are areas, to keep in mind as well. But again, so we'll just call that, again, a flood advisory. And again, like I mentioned, it's just now coming out. And again, it's going to be for Dallas County through 8:45. The bottom line is, as it's raining, stay on the roads, even once it's done raining and maybe you still need to run a last minute errand because you were stuck at home because of the rain, give it some time, right? Give it some time. And for the roadways for the water to come down for any ponding ongoing. Let's come back over to radar. And I want to center this up. I want to look at both of these kind of separately, right? I want to come back up here to the north just for the fact this one is the one that's been kind of giving us a few signals that I was trying to intensify just a little bit. No necessarily indication that right now. I'm trying to look inside at the hail core. And we're only going to get the hail core every other sweep, and we may be in between sweeps now because of the mode of the radar. So let me come over to velocities. We'll just take a look at that quickly here. And again, we'll lapse this. And again, like I mentioned, we're just looking for any downbursting signatures, any issues we've ran into as we've gone through the late afternoon, the evening. Right now, we're not seeing that. I do want to try if we can just catch it in between sweeps. Look at that hail core tracker, only for the fact, again, we've just continued to get kind of a small little signal that again, that hail core, again, was trying to come back to life. And let me use the hail icon. And so right now it's not, right? It's saying maybe, and this is different than what we typically use. I'm just using a different product here. It's basically putting the hail core around pennies, right? In fact, in that situation, around dimes. So really not concerning now, but still heavy rain. Again, if you're in, kind of north central sections of Dallas County, right? Northwest Highway up towards, like Preston Hollow. Some of those areas back down towards University Park, mainly the western sides of University Park, and then eventually over towards 75, the SMU campus, Highland Park, again, kind of the western portions of Oak Lawn. Again, heads up, right? More heavy rain, quite a bit of vivid lightning. I mean, we're hearing the thunder here, and we're off the Stimmons, again, over and over again, moving back in, right? But right now, the hail concern, not necessarily there. And again, the wind concern, definitely not there compared to where we were earlier. So then this activity down, more so in southern Dallas County. Let's just roll that into movie mode quickly here just to kind of get the trend. Kind of maintaining its own, right? Not overly still strong, but again, it's definitely still there compared to where it was. But right now with this one, it's mainly just heavy rain. And it's right here along the 175 out towards Seagaville, Interstate 20. Highway 80 would be just north of that, Balch Springs. So we've got the LBJ coming around towards Interstate 20. This would be 45 right there at Hutchins, moving down towards Wilmer. And then you can also see Lancaster there as well. Again, some heavier activity moving in that direction. But right now, mainly Balch Springs, and again, mainly back over through the Hutchins area with this southern cell. And again, like I mentioned, that will continue to move to the south. It's moving at a pretty good clip now at almost 40 miles per hour. You can see South Oak Cliff. There's been some fairly heavy rain that's moved through South Oak Cliff. A lot of that's already now beginning to taper off. You can see the 67 there heading down to the southwest, like maybe down towards Duncanville, against Cedar Hill. Some of those locations, really, you guys missed out. I was trying to look a little further off there, right? You guys maybe got in Deville, a couple raindrops, but again, by and large, this has kind of missed you, right? We don't want the severe weather, obviously, but we all desperately need some rain. But again, some of our communities there definitely missed out. Again, you can see it there, again, pulling off to the southeast. So let's do this. Let me come back over to the Reunion Tower cam, and I just saw that. Yeah, I saw that out of the corner of my eye. Let's take one more look at this. And again, right now it's not necessarily raining in downtown, right? We already had the rain one round that moved through, but we've got that next batch coming in from the north. And I'm telling you, and we're seeing the lightning, and what we saw, and I saw it out of the corner of my eye down here too, was the lightning coming in with this. The first round that moved through, there were a couple strikes of lightning and some thunder that we heard, not a lot, but this next push that's coming in is pretty electrically active. And again, you're even seeing on the Bank of America building, see the reflection of that? But again, the little reflections you're seeing even right there, that's all lightning coming in. And so again, this is pretty electrically active stuff, the second round that's going to be pushing through. And again, like I mentioned, we're still hearing the thunder here at our studios as well. So keep in mind lightning safety. I doubt that there's a lot of folks obviously outdoors. It's already been raining. You're not going to be caught off guard by it, but there is quite a bit of lightning. Okay, let's go and center this up one more time. And again, none of this is any longer severe, okay? We just want to be very clear about that. I want to look off here to the northwest again for our friends out to the northwest. Again, we're talking about Montague, Jack, Young, Stevens County. You folks are under a severe thunderstorm watch, and I know you're very diligently looking off to your northwest and again, wondering what's going on. This is our main round that we're still watching. And again, this is a broken line of supercells. This is tough weather out there. And again, as we go over the next hour or so, it's going to be moving towards the Wichita Falls area and then eventually moving into our western counties, right? And then eventually, the data continues to show more of a complex developing and then moving towards the Metroplex as we get closer to 10 p.m., 11 p.m., into midnight, very late this evening, right? So we've got a lot of stuff still going on to the northwest. We're watching all of that. And again, the deeper we get into the evening, obviously, that could be, especially for our western counties initially, concerning, right? We're talking about a large hail threat. We're talking about a wind threat. Very low wind tornado probability now. The Storm Prediction Center is drawing in out there. But again, still appears to be a hail and a wind threat, right, coming in with that activity. Right now, we're seeing supercell shapes out there that should morph more into a complex the deeper we get into the evening. As it moves in specifically to the Metroplex, should also be a complex. Heavy rain and wind at that point in time, right? But we've still got a lot of weather on the way, right, as we go through the evening. So let's go and zoom in one more time here into Dallas County. And, like I said, this is no longer severe. In fact, as we've zoomed right in, the lightning strike counter has now even dropped to 14. So we're even seeing less and less lightning, and that's just over the last 5 minutes. As I mentioned, we've had quite a bit of thunder here at our studios over the last 15 minutes or so, but again, you even see the lightning strikes there beginning to drop as well. So let me take a look here at, here's what we're going to do. In fact, we're going to actually, just because it is literally at the bottom of the hour now, we are going to take a quick break. And again, we're going to kind of regroup here. Obviously, we have kind of a long night of weather. And we just jumped on here. I mean, I've been on for, maybe like 2 hours. I haven't had a drink of water as this activity was moving through. So we are going to take a quick break since we're at the bottom of the hour. And obviously, we're going to be here with you as we go through the evening. And again, keeping you up to date with what's going on. Keep it here with Weather Tracker TV. This activity is moving through. So we are going to take a quick break since we're at the bottom of the hour. And obviously, we're going to be here as we go through the evening. And again, keeping you up to date with what's going on. Keep it here with Weather Tracker TV.
Broadcasting live from our storm studios in Dallas, across North Texas and around the world. This is Weather Tracker TV, North Texas's Weather Channel. Now, from the Weather Tracker TV Storm Studios, this is your weather tonight. Here's Chief.
Okay,